wait for it to go live.
Okay.
Okay, we're all set.
Okay. All right, good evening. Welcome to the July 20th, 2021 Town of Rush Planning Board meeting. Members present tonight are myself, Jeff Warner. To my left is Scott Strock. To Scott's left is Steve McPherson. To my right is Todd Ewell. To Todd's right is Phil Swickerham, who's the town board liaison to the planning board. We also have with us Deputy Town Clerk Shelley O'Hearn and Town Attorney John Mancuso. So the first item that we will cover are the approval of the minutes of the June 15th, 2021 Planning Board. Does anybody have changes? Okay,
I have quite a few.
all right. I have some also, so why don't
You want to go first?
go ahead, you start and I'll see if mine overlap yours.
Page 3. Nothing really wrong, and I like short minutes, but I would have preferred for the Jonathan properties, I would have preferred to include our comments that I think we said we needed a more complete site plan, and we talked quite a bit about section 120-60 about landscape malls and the fact that the code requires no outside storage. But again, that's just my preference. Page 4, there's at the very, very bottom, the last line, application is repeated twice, so that's just a typographical error. Okay. Page 5, about the middle, number 2. Says the applicant, one of the requirements was the applicant needs to provide a sketch of the septic system. It says at the top right of the plans. I think we met at the actual location on the plans. I think the idea there was we wanted to be sure that there was no interference in the septic system with, I think this was a subdivision.
So how do you want to reword that?
I'd rather say the applicant provide a sketch of the septic system at the actual location on the plans.
Existing septic system.
Yeah.
Okay.
On page 5, again in the middle, the second, it is further resolved. It says it is further resolved that the planning board grants preliminary site plan approval subject to the following conditions. We don't do preliminary approvals for site plans.
Which page are we on? I'm sorry.
Page 5, I'm sorry,
Page
6.
6.
Sorry, page 6. Second, it is further resolved. We need to eliminate that preliminary. We don't do preliminary approvals for site plans. It's only for subdivisions. At the bottom C, it says Proc site plan application 2021-07P. It's actually Pinnacle Road subdivision 2021-07P. On page 7, almost halfway down the middle whereas, it says the zoning board of appeals examined application 2021-047 is granted in variance on June 10, 2021. That's very correct. I would have preferred if this said for site for lots 3 and 5. Granted a variance for lots 3 and 5 on June 10th, 2021. Just to be specific, since there were 2. Now,
That's 04Z.
oh yeah.
That's okay.
Now, here's the big one. The first, it is further resolved about 2/3 of the way down.
On page 7.
It's still on
Page
page
7.
7. It is further resolved that the planning board has considered the significance of the proposed subdivision by reviewing and examining the EAF including completing the analysis for parts 2 and 3 of the EAF for the proposed subdivision, which EAF is hereby approved, adopted, and incorporated. My problem is I don't think we did that. I think we only did one EAF review, parts 2 and 3, and that was the one led by Attorney Mancuso. He was recused for this application, so we did not review seeker for this. That's probably something we need to go back and do. I'm pretty sure about that. I welcome anybody verifying or disproving.
This is the Giardino
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah, it was a site plan.
What date was the approval?
Oh, I'm sorry, it was a subdivision.
It was the,
Yeah,
it
it
was
was
the-
Was it more than 30 days ago? June
Yeah, I
15th.
guess.
Yeah.
June
The
15th.
statute of limitations has expired.
Yeah.
So there's no way to challenge it at this point.
Okay. So I don't know, how do you reflect that in the notes?
I was not in the room, so I cannot,
Right.
I cannot speak to what occurred.
Well, again, I only remember us going through that process one time led by John, and it was it was for the other subdivision. Okay, on page 8. At the top, number 3, it says an easement will be provided for access to the following lots, and it lists them all. And I think we said it required approval by the town attorney or the alternate attorney and the town engineer. I think that ought to be stated.
Are we still doing the Pinnacle Road?
Yes. A little further down, D, it says Pinnacle Road subdivision application. It's really Proc site plan subdivision. On page 9, at the very top, it is further resolved, the planning board grants preliminary approval. Again, this is a site plan. It doesn't have preliminary approval, so it's just plain site plan approval without the preliminary. Below that, item 3, the applicant addressed all town engineers' comments on the letter dated June 7, 2021, including updating the septic system design and drainage. I think what we had there was the septic system was not shown where the perk tests were, so I think what we asked for was updating the septic system location relative to the perk tests.
Can I just ask for legal purposes? When these are resolutions and they're sent in approval letters, then a month later, we're changing the information. Can we change it?
The letter is not the dispositive information as to what the board approved, what they resolved at the meeting would trump the letter. So if they're attempting to clarify what was actually said, then that would be the scope of the conditions and the scope of the approval. So we would probably have to clarify with
So I have to listen to the recording.
applicant. If there is a question, if there is some ambiguity, then I would go back to the recording since we have it to check on exactly what the condition was.
Okay.
Both for minute purposes and to make sure the applicant knows what the precise condition
So
is.
from my understanding, where did these specific words come from? Were they something handed from the chairman to the clerk, or was it something that was taken off of the recording? Where did it come from?
Are you talking about the resolutions?
Well, yeah,
Okay, so it was a combination of me taking minutes and listening to the recording and,
The original resolution or the draft resolution.
right.
and so my guess is, for example, this came up only, I believe, at the meeting. So this would have been on the recording probably, as opposed to a draft resolution.
Yeah, there were no draft resolutions
Right.
that night.
We didn't
Besides
have
what,
anything drafted.
besides the one that special counsel might have prepared for the one that I was accused off of.
Right, right, he did draft that.
But as to the others, we did them live, so the conditions were framed that evening, so the only record would be the video.
Because it does beg the question, how did it get recorded that we did a secret review that we didn't do?
He wrote the resolution, the attorney, and I just typed it for
Okay.
him, so.
And I believe if I covered page 9. Last one is minor and it may have been actually this way on the document.
He's on
I'm
page,
saying page 12.
page 12.
Page 12, where there's about 3/4 of the way down, development of a single space megawatt alternating current system.
Mhm.
We now know that's 5. So I'm not sure what the document actually said.
It does say 5.
Yeah, okay.
Says 5 in mine. Does it say 5 in yours?
I don't have it here.
Okay.
Oh, you said 5?
Yeah, on page 12.
That's interesting.
Yeah, twice.
No, mine actually is space. Look,
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
do you have the
So-
line?
Yeah, and that was brought up at the last town board meeting, Scott, and I don't know.
It was
What-
just left
what
off
happens,
and I
but-
fixed it.
this is the notes. Okay, so I
Yeah.
must have
It
an
was
earlier
supposed to
version of the
be
notes.
5, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I
Sorry
don't,
about that
yeah,
one.
I printed off what you sent us too, so
Yeah.
it's somewhere between you and me, it got fixed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay. All right, and that covers what I had also. Well, you had a lot more than what I had, so. Steve, did you have anything? No. All right, so do I have a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
I'll make
All right, you make a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
All right,
I'll second.
all right.
Member McPherson,
I,
member Straugh,
Aye.
deputy chair Werner.
Aye. Okay. So now we're on to public hearings for this evening. And Shelley, would you like to read the public notice for application 2021-10P?
Notice is hereby given that pursuant to the provisions of the zoning law of the town of Rush and section 274A and section 274B of the town law, a public hearing will be held by the planning board of the town of Rush at the Rush Town Hall, 5977 East Henrietta Road, Rush, New York, 14543. Via Zoom on July 20th, 2021 at 7 p.m. to hear all persons interested in the following applications. Application 2021-10P by Eric Newsom, requesting a site plan approval for the construction of a single-family dwelling with associated utilities, including a private well. The property is located at 8 Madeline's Way, Rush, New York, 14543, and is zoned R30.
Okay, who do we have? Is there anybody with us tonight for this application?
this is Eric Newsom. I think we have Tony Tintera on from Maker Engineering. I hope we have Tony Maker on Maker Engineering.
It's here.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. Come on up.
It's all right if I.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds good. All right, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me just fine? All righty, hello, my name is Tony Sinclair. I'm the project engineer with Mahar Engineering for the Newsom site plan project on 8 Madeline's Way in town of Rush. As Shelley had said, what is being proposed is just a single family home on the lot, along with just a driveway extending from the hammerhead at the end of Madeline's Way, and a septic system comprised of drop boxes, a private well. Really, all the components on site were originally approved in a separate project in the Atlantic subdivision. We're going through the site plan approval process. Separate based on the modifications to the site plan. As such, I'd like to just go over a brief discussion of the review process or the review agencies that has followed since the last meeting when I.
You like to sit down and you don't have to stand.
It's just a preference.
Okay,
really.
all right.
Unless there's an issue with the.
No.
this company.
No,
So earlier on, before the project was formally submitted, we had submitted plans to Monroe County Department of Health, Go, who had reviewed the project. Ultimately, all comments have been addressed, and a letter from Brett Grover correspondence had been included in the original application materials for the project. The town engineer Todd had provided his comment letter a little while back, and ultimately in conversing with him, it's my understanding that the town highway superintendent also reviewed the project and was in favor of what is shown and had not brought up any further comments from what Todd had provided in his comment letter. Ultimately, I responded to Todd's comment letter earlier last week, and at that point forwarded the response to Shelley as well. Aside from the town engineer, we received a comment from the town conservation board just requesting that the project be shown as it relates to a map from Google Earth that was also provided to the town of Rush. Aside from the town engineer, town conservation board, and Monroe County DOH, we did receive the response packet from Monroe County Planning earlier last week from Shelley. There were a couple comments. The second comment notes that the project is within the Eastern Agricultural District and that an ag data statement may be required. Ultimately, I had reached out to Agostino Mineo. I apologize if I may have butchered the pronunciation. And discussed with him just the implication of the nearby parcels that were 500 feet within the project and whether or not there was an active farm operation on it. In my discussion, Agostino noted that no ag exemption occurred on agricultural district property within 500 feet of the project, which indicates that there's no active farm operation within 500 feet of the project, and as such, no agricultural data statement should be necessary to provide for the project. Ultimately, I cross-referenced with the town of Rush's tentative tax roll earlier on in the project to make sense of that, just because of the way Monroe County Planning provides their review mapping, and that it needs to be both conditions, not just one or the other. With respect to seeker, the project was flagged for archaeological sensitivity as well as proximity to bald eagles. In corresponding with the appropriate review agencies, namely SHPO and USADC, what we had received was the review from Robert Call, a letter indicating that there's no need for a permit for the project, given how its development may impact nearby bald eagle nests. That letter was provided along to the town of Rush and planning board members. With respect to the SHPO review done by Jocelyn Ferguson, the no effect finding essentially indicates that there's no need for additional archaeological survey to be done on the site. So at that point, I'd like to turn the conversation over to the planning board members with respect to any questions they may have of the project.
I guess explain again the 500 feet. Because it was not receiving ag exemption, it does not qualify to be in an ag district, but it's still, was there ag lands identified within 500 feet of this parcel? Land that was being cropped or farmed?
No, and with respect to like satellite imagery, and I did print out, happy that I sure. If you want, just pass this to us yourself. So, yeah,
I think she made copies of this. But.
Yeah, it's honestly the Google Earth map is actually it's in that packet of materials with the sections from the tentative tax roll. The map that had been provided to us by the reviewer, Stephen Olufsen, with Monroe County Planning. They have some sort of GIS map, and that's similar to, I guess, Encore that's going to be made available to us eventually. But it's fairly handy. It shows that the regions of Eastern Agricultural District land do include a lot of the residential properties on Meadowlands Way as well as Honey Hill Road to the southwest. That being said, the satellite imagery does not show any active farm operations. The tax roll, there are usually the identifiers that, well, it's my understanding that if there is the line underneath line of the tax roll that says may be subject to the ag district payment until so-and-so year, that would indicate that there is an active farm operation on said parcel. However, the closest one to our site is greater than 500 feet from the nearest property boundary line, whatever you wanna call it. So again, with respect to the ag data statement, it requires that there is active farm operation in agricultural district land within 500 feet of the project site, which was identified that there was not.
As far as comments received on this, you just extensively covered part of Monroe County's comments for the ag data, and we understand better why that is not applicable. And it just goes on to say that the proposed Monroe County Department of Health, the proposed project utilizes private wastewater treatment system and will require approval by Monroe County Department of Public Health. Monroe County Department of Transportation, the project was not sent. Because that is a town road, correct, Madeline's Way?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Comments that we received from the town engineer from Clough Harbor. Yep, so this was received on June 30th, 2021, just to read it into the record. This is for the Newsom site plan review, application 2021-10P. Dear Mr. Sweet, Clough Harbor Associates has reviewed site plan application, site plan prepared by Meager Engineering, dated 5/4/21. Response letters from New York State DEC and environmental assessment form, and offers following comments. The proposed project appears to be a type 2 action pursuant to seeker. A coordinated seeker review is not required. The applicant should explain the intent of the application to the town planning board, including responses of no effect from SHPO regarding archaeology, endangered species, and historic preservation. The applicant should coordinate with town highway superintendent regarding driveway tie-in to Madeline's Way. The project septic system design has been reviewed and approved by Monroe County Department of Health. MCDOH approval should be obtained prior to signature by the town. Applicant should include the town of Rush within the location sketch on all plans. The proposed disturbance of 0.967 acres is under the 5-acre minimum for residential construction, and therefore a SWIP for SWPPP for quality and quantity is stormwater prevention, pollution prevention plan. Is not required. However, the applicant will need to follow all New York State DEC Blue Book best practices for erosion and sediment control during and after construction. 7, applicant should provide the town's code enforcement officer with building plans for review and approval prior to issuing a building permit. Final drawings should be certification and signed by licensed land surveyor and signed by a licensed engineer. Do you have any questions on those comments?
Just a couple responses with respect to the comments. The location map and the updated plans calls out the town of Rush as being where the project is located. And then with respect to that last comment, the topographic survey, which was conducted by Peter Offerman, I believe, copies of that survey were sent along to the planning board in the town of Rush.
Okay. We have a printed response here from you also. I will not read that into the record, but does anybody have any questions on those so far? All right. All right, on the conservation board, the Rush Conservation Board application review of the Newsom site plan. We have reviewed the above named application and have the following questions or comments regarding the project. The Conservation Board would like to see a Google Earth map that reflects the exact location of the overall project. And let the record note that the applicant has supplied a map to satisfy that request. Shelley, did a copy of that go back to the Conservation Board by chance?
I asked actually the other night at the town board meeting when the conservation board poses a question or requests a question, then the applicant is supposed to supply the planning board with that or the zoning board, depending on which the application is for. So
it stops here.
That's what I.
Yes, I
understood as well,
asked.
that there was no reason to send it back to them. They were just questioning whether, this is what their recommendation to whichever board they come before.
Okay,
So.
all right, so we got that. The next response that you included with your application was from the New York State Parks, Recreation, Historical Preservation. This is dated June 11th. In regards to your project at 8 Madeline's Way, dear Anthony Tintera, thank you for requesting the comments of the Division of Historic Preservation of the Office of Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation. As part of your seeker process, these comments are those of the OPRHP and relate only to historic and cultural resources. They do not include potential environmental impacts in New York State parkland that may be involved in ordinary projects. Such impacts must be considered as part of the environmental review of the project pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, New York Environmental Conservation Law, Article 8, and its implementing regulations 6 NYCRR Part 617. We have reviewed the provided documentation. Based on this review, they have no concerns for archaeological or historic or built historical resources. Yeah. In regards to the DEC, I guess I won't keep reading all these. We'll include them as part of the record. But Anthony, you mentioned about a bald eagle potentially in the area, nesting in the area. And the DEC commented that although a bald eagle nest is known to occur near your project location, the DEC does not anticipate your proposed action to result in the taking because the property is far enough from the closest known nesting location that impacts the eagles. The impacts to the eagles are not anticipated. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to the board. Does the board have any questions?
I think you covered the SHPO item that you checked on the short form environmental assessment, so that was covered. Item 17 talks about stormwater discharge, and you made a comment, or somebody made a comment, that stormwater is to be directed to existing drainage swale storm pipe on the southeast side of Madeline's Way. Now, this is quite a hilly area, so could you just point out on the map where the water goes?
Yeah, so currently there is a culvert that comes into Eric Kingstone's property located right here. This is essentially proposed on the northern side of the proposed driveway layout in directing runoff from the driveway away from the neighbors at the southwest towards the existing drainage facility. A driveway culvert is just provided such that runoff coming to this point can cross over and ultimately be directed to the existing drainage facility.
So it goes down the side of Madeline's Way. Is that what happens to it?
That's my
Ultimately,
understanding from the survey, in terms of what was provided. by-
well, where is the water drains off the area, even the driveway? Where does it end up going? So it does not go to the neighbor's property?
No, yeah, so ultimately what was provided through our plans was a gradual well, not gradual, but just a cross slope directing runoff essentially to the east from the neighbor and driveway to the west. Such that there's a driveway swale that exists along this eastern edge, making its way up to the inlet right there.
And then where does it go?
And that's where we cross over to.
It gets a culvert at that point?
Yes.
And does that go to the pond that's down? Is there a pond down the hill?
It's my understanding that there is like a depression region in the neighboring area up there, but
Okay. Now, the driveways are very close, so again, could you just describe the water flow or the elevation difference between the driveways?
so with respect to the elevation, the elevation difference between the driveways.
Were they pretty close there?
Yes,
Are they the same elevation essentially?
they're not. So in order to provide safer ingress and egress for our applicant, what we had proposed is an average slope that would benefit our applicant. And as such, the driveway in this area has been built up slightly.
Okay,
In reality, it would be, say, 1-on-3 away from the property line with no disturbance on the neighboring property.
what's between the two driveways, the neighbors and this applicant? Is it just grass?
It's just grassy. There's no like fencing. Originally, actually, the former owners, before Eric and Sonia, it's my understanding that they had a sort of handshake agreement
I
where,
understand that, yeah, to share the driveway.
yeah, they shared a driveway, but early on, it was understood that we would have to provide access off of Madeline's Way and not build off of the neighbor driveway.
Scott, I believe, so he's talking the drainage is gonna be on this side, and then it's gonna cross over.
Okay,
And I believe it would come down along the north side of Madeline's Way and then cross under. And there's drainage ditch that flows behind these properties into the pond and then out of the pond here across 5 Points and then on.
okay, thanks.
So looking at that.
All right, so you're essentially capturing any water that comes down the hill to the driveway, and that's being directed towards the street. And so anything that flows from this driveway onto the neighbor's property would only be from a few feet area of grass, right?
Exactly. The tributary region would be just that grassy area.
Okay.
Stop it from raining so much.
All right, so with that, I'll open it up to, if no further comments, anything from Phyllis? All right. Town attorney,
No comment.
okay, thank you. And Shelley, anybody in the audience? Okay. Shelley, do we have anybody on Zoom? Okay, so with that, I will make the motion. Is there anything that you'd like to add before we close the public hearing?
Just that we're also here requesting the determination for the project and approvals.
Okay, all right. All right, so with that, I will make a motion that we close the public hearing for application 2021-10P. Do I have a second? Second. Do I have a second?
Member McPherson,
Aye.
Member Strack,
Aye.
Deputy Chair Werner.
Aye. Thank you very much. Need a bigger table. Figured that out.
And there's only three of us.
There's only 3 of us, and you should see how much I take off. You guys are more efficient. All right, so let's move on to application 2021-11P, the Meyer Site Plan Subdivision. Shelley, would you please read the public hearing on this application?
Application 2021-11P by Thomas and Sharon Meyer requesting a subdivision and site plan approval for the subdivision of one parcel at 35.72 acres into two separate parcels of lot 1 at 33.72 acres and lot 2 at 2.0 acres. Proposed construction of a single-family dwelling on proposed lot 2 with associated utilities, including a private well. The property is located at 8800 West Henrietta Road, Rush, New York, 14543, and is zoned R30.
All right, good evening.
Good evening, Rob Fitzgerald, project engineer for this site plan and subdivision here tonight. Representing kind of two clients, the owner of the parcel. They're looking at selling a piece of roughly 2-acre parcel to their nephew, so he can build a single-family home for himself and his family. It's out of approximately a 30-acre farm parcel. Some of it is actively being farmed right now. Actually, we're replacing the house in the back, the septic in the house. This piece is being farmed. So it's a little bit better soil, so that's why we did perk that area. The house is set approximately 300 feet off the road. That's the state highway, so we work with the state DOT for a driveway curb permit. In general, we got county comments, mostly we can get into more specific addressing those as this board would like me to, but mostly boilerplate by nature. I did receive town engineering comments as well. I don't have any issues addressing those. I've actually already addressed them on this plan. I just got them today, so I did not resubmit to the board, but I don't have any issues with those whatsoever. A couple minor things, just showing a bump out in the driveway because it is a longer driveway. We of course I did the perk test myself with the Monroe County Health Department. Those were witnessed. I have to get that approved by the health department. There's some additional site statistics information they wanted, not just what was proposed, but not just what's required, but also proposed. So I added that to my site statistics chart as well. But I'd like to hand it to the board and just answer any specific questions the board may have.
I guess what I'll do first is we'll go through some of the comments. So you've gone over, you said you've gone over all the comments that were received from the town engineer. And explain the intent. So we received these July 7th. And I guess you addressed the driveway pull-off. The applicant should explain the intent of the application, the presence archaeological impacts, and secret number 12B in the EAF mapper.
Yeah, so now when we do the short form EAF, it populates a lot of the items online for you, which is good and bad. This is one thing that gets checked off quite a bit now is the archaeological sensitive area. I print out a map. This darker area in Rush, that's all considered archaeological sensitive area. Pretty much 3/4 of Rush is. And our parcels right here, basically, this is a good example right here. They basically say if they found something in the past, they put a dot right there, and they draw like I think it's a 1 mile radius around it.
Okay.
So it pretty much covers most of the town. Because we have been farmed in the past, anything that would have been there would have been disturbed at this point. But we can obviously follow up with SHPO and get a clearance letter that the town engineer did request.
Okay. Number 3, the applicant should include proposed site statistics, including all proposed setbacks. You said you've added those?
Yes.
Okay. Applicant should include driveway pull-off. You've added that. The project septic system design will need to be reviewed. That'll be part of the final approval for Monroe County Department of Health, New York State DOT. That'll be a signature at the end at final for the driveway. Is there a driveway culvert? It's fairly flat where.
It's fairly flat. We're actually kind of at a crest, so water will sheet both ways in a roadside ditch.
Okay.
We will not. Obviously, the DOT will make the final determination, but we're not proposing a culvert this time.
Okay.
Just a high point. We're
Okay.
shedding to both the north and the south.
Okay. 7, applicant should remove signatures for highway superintendent and Monroe County Water Authority. Of course, there's state road and there's no public water there. The proposed disturbance is 0.88 acres is under the 5-acre minimum. Applicant should provide the town code enforcement with building plans prior to building permit. Well, that's a no-brainer requirement. Final drawing should be certification signed by a licensed land surveyor. All right.
And I'm the engineer of record, so I have signed off, and Robert Avery, he's the surveyor of record, he signed off as well.
So comments from Monroe County Department of Planning is in regards, the first one. So these were received July 6th. And applicants are encouraged to contact, yeah, according to New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. It appears a portion of a stream is located on the subject property. Where would that be? At the rear of the property?
Yes, this is, I know it looks weird, but I wanted to show it because it was a pertinent item. This is actually where it is in relationship to our site. So this is actually that tributary that's
Okay.
towards the back.
All right,
So it's actually just off of us.
it's off your property rights. Okay,
Off the remaining lands or off the subdivision?
Off this subdivision piece is just on the outskirts
Still
of
need the,
the overall.
is it still on the overall mayor parcel though? Is it on the mayor parcel or is it on the right of way of Niagara Mohawk?
Pretty much biceps right here. There's a 30-foot drainage easement that's in place on it currently.
Yeah, there was already movement on it.
Already?
Yeah, that's what he
Okay.
had, so, and it didn't show, was it in our, no.
All right,
we should note that though on the resolution.
no.
You want me to add it, Chad?
Scott. So, yeah, well,
You have one too.
you have an extra pen? Scott. Okay.
And actually, also from this board, I think it's 15 or 20 years ago. We carved out a portion, the north side of the farm,
Okay,
for Mayor as well, Matthew Mayor.
Matt,
Yeah, and at that time, that's when the easement got into place.
okay. Number 3 from Monroe County is New York State Ag and Markets Law in regards to 500 feet. It's within 500 feet of ag land. So do you have the ag data statement?
We did include that. in
You
our
did
package.
include it, and it's a note on the plans. The town has a kind of a boilerplate ag data note that goes on the plans, used to go on the plans. If you don't have that, we'll ask for that to be on the plan. It basically says that the project is within 500 feet of agriculture operation and could be subject to noise, dust, and odors. That's
If
fine.
it's not on there, I'll
That
certainly
will-
add
we
it.
can work,
It probably is, but
we'll work
I don't wanna
with you on
waste
that. Then number 4, according to National Wetland Inventory maps prepared by the United States Department of Interior, the site appears to contain a portion of a federal wetland that is classified as PUBHH. Although a buffer area is not required, it is beneficial to the wetland if a natural buffer of 100 feet is left around it. In addition, please note that while the NWI maps are based upon aerial photography and not field data, they are a strong indicator that wetlands regulated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers may exist on the project site.
if I reference this plan here, which I did include as part of our package as well, there is a small pocket pond that's, I'm guessing what they're flagging as federal wetlands. That's probably 800 feet away from any site improvements that we're making.
Okay.
But I would guess that's what they're referring to.
That
because
could
it
be
is-
one, or it could be all the way at the rear of the property. This property adjoins not this 2-acre parcel, but the mayor parcel adjoins the National Grid power lines.
Correct.
And that's it's pretty much all wetlands back through there where those power lines run.
And then if people don't know the location, the firing range, I believe, is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Found
so-
out about that while doing perks, wondering why there was lots of shooting going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was-
Okay, so that's Monroe County. We have comments from the Rush Conservation Board. They sent these July 1st, 2021. And we've reviewed the above named application. We have following questions, comments regarding the project. Conservation Board would like to see a Google Earth map that reflects the exact location of the overall project.
And I did include that in our package. I know that's on a checklist. Maybe it wasn't super clear. But this map is part of the package, and where it says subject parcel, that's literally where our house is going up here.
Okay. All right, I'll open it up to the board. Scott?
On the remaining lands, we require that it be stated not approved for building as well as remaining lands.
Okay.
I think you covered the environmental assessment form 12B, which said you said you would get the SHPO letter, right?
We'll get it to complete the file.
And let's see. Okay, we covered the water bodies, because you mentioned in 13, it does adjoin wetlands or other water bodies, so you covered that. 17 creates stormwater discharge either from point or non-point sources, and you check no. But you're showing that sump discharge near the corner, which will run onto the neighbor's property, remaining lands. So if nothing else, this I think should be checked yes. That's all.
So Scott point that out. Again, is that the stormwater discharge coming from the house?
Yeah, I think
Residents?
I think it's the sump pump discharge.
Yeah, that's the sump crop discharge.
So I presume it would be intermittent. It's right
Yeah,
here,
okay.
but it's very close to the other property, and then we'll go downhill. So I don't know what's the correct designation there. Maybe it's not a big deal, but
Right now, it's the same property owner. We're getting approved.
Yes and no. Tom owns yes, it's same property owner right now, but eventually it'll be two separate property owners. So could we mitigate it through doing something with the sump pump discharge? Direct it someplace else on the property, put it into a dry well. Is
That typically an issue or use, because with such, like I said, we're gonna have to have a crock in the basement. We have the house pulled out of the ground quite a bit just to get gravity to the septic. So we're hoping that's not gonna be running much at all, but we still need to have a crock in the basement.
and you really don't want it running to the north because you want it away from the septic system.
mhm. Yeah, I'm not sure it's a problem, but I would rather see this marked yes and an explanation down below of why it's not a problem.
All right, I guess. Steve, what's your feeling on that?
I'm okay if we do what Scott's suggestion, if we change that designation and mark it as yes, and then put down what we're just talking about now.
Okay,
I would be fine with that.
all right.
It'd be intermittent flows at best, and not towards any other residential structure.
Right, it's not going towards any other
It's going to
residential.
farm,
Yeah.
log field.
Right. How deep is the bedrock here in this parcel? You done a deep hole test?
Yes, or in this location over here, it is higher. We did do several pits in this location to make sure we were clear. Oddly enough, this would have perked better, but would
Okay,
hit bedrock, so that was an issue.
so where the septic is, what do you have for soil to work with there? You got 3 feet, 4 feet?
For the septic itself, we went down to 50 inches. We didn't hit any resistance.
You didn't, okay.
And where is this? Is this south of the Werner Forefront Solar Farm? Is that north?
It would be, yeah, it'd be,
Just curious.
it'd actually be quite a bit south. There's another
Almost
parcel.
6 foot.
It would be closer to the Helios. Is that where you were going with that?
No, I
Okay.
was just wondering which one it might be looking at.
It probably wouldn't see either one because it's set back so far from the road and the vegetation that is surrounding it, I wouldn't say. And it would be it'd be at the same elevation, if not a lower elevation than the Helios project, the way the ground lays there. Okay. And you'd have 390 between it
In between, yeah.
and another house in between it also. All right, any other comments, Scott? All right, Steve, do you have any comments? Okay. Attorney for the town, any comments?
No comment.
Town board liaison?
The only question that I had is, are we requiring to know how big the square footage of the house is gonna be that's putting there, or does that happen at a different time? Because isn't there a requirement for a minimum of square footage?
It's a site plan approval.
Yeah, that would be for site plan.
Or is that the building permit?
So what's the square footage of the house?
I believe it's around 2,000, but typically, we'd submit a building plan. I think that's the.
Okay,
Yeah.
so not at this time. Okay, just that was the only
Okay.
note that I had.
They
Okay,
submitted it, yeah, it was approved.
Square footage is on the plan itself. Is it on the plan itself?
I didn't see it anywhere.
somewhere I saw 2-story home, but I did not remember, I don't remember seeing the square footage.
It's a 3-bedroom house, 2 stories,
Yeah.
it's around 2,000.
Yeah, sometimes the developer will submit the actual plans for the house.
Right, I think I'm not sure if he has them 100%.
Hasn't picked it out yet.
They picked out, I don't know if they've put that money into it,
I've
kind of
never
next step.
heard of discussion of square footage of a house except relative to an accessory apartment.
Yeah, I guess I've never, but it's okay. I mean, it's okay to ask. Yeah.
I know we have requirements for,
For minimum.
There's a minimum requirement, right?
And I think,
and there was no reference.
yeah, I think even for a site plan, though, it's not that specific for the house design. We did get the house design for the previous application, which I've never seen before. I love looking at it, but it's not something we ever get.
It set the bar kind of high for us.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, anybody in the audience? Okay, Shelley, do we have anybody on Zoom that would has their hand up? Okay. Is there anything that you'd like to add that we didn't go over?
I'm all set.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to make a motion that we close the public hearing for application 2021-11P by Thomas and Sharon Mayer.
I'll second.
Member McPherson?
Aye.
Member Strack?
Aye.
Deputy Chair Werner?
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question, I know our board's different. Do I
Yep.
sit tight or?
You don't have to, because I don't think we have any further questions.
Okay.
And what we do is we go through all of the public hearings first and get those out of the way, and then we go back through and do our decisions and resolutions.
Okay, you don't need me here for that or?
We don't need you here
Okay.
for that. No.
Thank you so very much.
Drive safely. I don't know
Yes,
how hard it's
lots of
raining
deer
out
out there.
Yes.
All right, our next application this evening is application 2021-12P by Moore Family Farms for subdivision. Shelley, could you please read the public hearing notice?
Application 2021-12P by Moore Family Farms LLC requesting subdivision for proposed division of 2.5 acre parcel into 2 lots. The property is located at 786 Rush Scottsville Road, Rush, New York, 14543, and is zoned R30.
All right, and who do we have representing the Moore family?
Jim Missile here on Zoom, representing
Hello,
Moore
Jim.
Family Farms. Am I on your Zoom there, guys?
You are. Can
Okay.
you?
Very good. Yes,
Can you hear us?
we're asking. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry I was interrupting. I wanted to make sure you could hear us.
Yes, I can.
So Jim, go ahead and just give us a brief overview of what they're asking for here.
Okay. We're asking the board to approve a 2-lot subdivision. We've got approximately 3.5 acres on Rush Scottsville Road. And we're going to subdivide the property into 2 parcels, approximately 1.5 acres each. The western parcel, lot 1, will be vacant. And the eastern parcel contains the structures, driveway, and the barn. The division line between the 2 properties is going to run along an existing drainage ditch that comes from the north, runs through this property, then kind of turns to the west and keeps on going that way anyway. So a very simple land subdivision. And that's really all we're proposing to do. No development, no new structures, nothing of that sort. That's it.
All right, thank you. So correspondence that we have received on this application is from Monroe County, and they are reciting the ag district law within 500 feet, that the land could be, that an ag data statement needs to be filed for that, and you did submit that. All right, now move on. That was really all that was pertinent. The other was just boilerplate stuff. Comments from the town engineer through Clough Harbor, July 9th, 2021. The applicant should include the existing septic system on the map. And Jim, you gave us a copy of that today, sketched in the leach field area. You guys have that. That was just added today, this one here.
Yes, I sent that over today. Thank you, Shelley, for getting that to them.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, Phyllis has a copy if you want to peek at it, Todd.
Oh, Todd didn't get one? I'm so sorry. It's all right.
Fine.
The applicant should include page 2 of the EAF with the application for review. The EAF mapper for the project should be included with the EAF. Applicant should include a tie distance to the nearest public right of way. Applicant should include any existing water course within the property, along with an easement to the townwide drainage district for review by town attorney and engineer. Final drawing should be certified and signed by a licensed land surveyor. Jim, do you have any questions on those?
I think the only question I have is on the drainage easement. And what, first of all, whether you're going to require one on this particular ditch. We assume you are. And if you are, how wide would you like the easement? 30 feet or maybe 40 feet should be sufficient to contain the ditch and the bank and some room outside of that a little bit.
Off a bank.
Well,
typically.
Okay, the town engineer is saying 20 feet from the top of bank. Now, the question I had on this is, Todd, when we look at this parcel, does it matter which side, or has it got to be both sides?
Generally, we go both sides. That's, what we would typically do,
Okay,
especially if it runs through the middle. And they just do the top of bank on either side. There's no topo on here, so I don't know, Jim might have to go out and shoot that ditch. I don't think it's a big ditch, right, Jim?
No, it's just a small, it's a
Yeah.
drainage ditch,
Yeah.
basically
Really, yeah.
the,
Yeah,
to the northeast.
Right.
Northeast.
yeah.
Because after talking, Moore's were telling me the reason they bought this property originally was to get that ditch cleaned out because previous owner wouldn't clean it. And so now they've had a local person propose to purchase the house and part of the parcel, but they want to retain the parcel to the west so that if they have to go back in and clean the ditch, they can do that. All right, so Jim, Todd Ewell, our town engineer, basically is saying that the easement would run for both lots, lot 1 and lot 2, and it would be 20 feet out from the top of the bank of the ditch.
Okay, we'll check our field shots. We've located the ditch and the banks, and we'll come 20 feet from the banks if it's 40 or 50, whatever it is.
Okay.
Okay, we can do that.
All right, next comment is from the Rush Conservation Board. These were sent July 1st, 2021 for Moore Family Farm, application 2021-12P. We've reviewed the above named application and have the following questions, comments regarding the project. Should the project be called a water course or wetland? I guess let's answer these as we go down through them. Todd, I think what are the,
Well, it's not the project. Water course corridor is just asking, is there one? There's a drainage.
there's a drainage
Yeah,
ditch.
that's all.
Okay, so it would be a water course
Yeah.
corridor.
Potentially could be a wetland, but we don't know that. It's probably cleaned out, just a drainage ditch.
Okay.
Okay.
Number 2, how is the septic system affected in lot 2? Being smaller, you submitted a map to us and showed the leach field. There's no disturbance near the leach field. And the drainage ditch is between the 2 lots, so
Yeah, no,
everything existing is gonna stay existing.
correct.
Okay. And number 3, verification of connection to water lines, application number 10 question. So obviously that's for public water. Is the residence now, Jim, on public water?
Yes, it is. It's on public water, serviced out to a water main on the northerly side of the road. And from what the owners have told me, there isn't an existing well at all on the property anymore. So it's serviced by public water, comes right off the front of the house. It's a water main on the north side, I think is the public water main. And then I believe there's another water main on the south side that runs down to industry or something along that line. But it is serviced by public water, and the service comes right off the front of the house.
All right, so should that be noted on the
Yeah,
plan?
you should try and include that.
All right.
Show the water service location.
All right, so Jim,
Along with the septic.
you showed us the septic. Todd Ewell, town engineer, is asking that the public water also be shown on the map.
Okay, we can do that.
Cause for it. Yeah. All right, so, and I think why they asked this is because if you go to page 2, number 10, it says, will the proposed action connect to an existing public-private water supply? And they check no, because it is it's public water service. But I think they check no because
It's already connected.
it's already connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure that they didn't think of that, so,
So you can answer that either way.
yeah, exactly,
It's an existing residence that's already connected.
exactly.
Okay. All right, so we have those comments. I'll turn it over to the board. Steve, do you have any comments? No questions? Okay, Scott?
Well, difficult one here is we have an existing non-conformance on the setback of the existing house. Right, the setback requirement is 110 feet, but it's only 89. So I think what we've been doing is requiring a prior area variance or to get a new one. Isn't that right?
So you're suggesting we go to the zoning board for a variance for a pre-existing non-conforming structure?
Well, you're creating a new lot too. It
Right,
has non-conformance. So
Yes.
the way we handle that is requiring evidence that there's an existing variance or we need a new area variance.
So from the-
well, I'm not aware of an existing one. I can ask,
Well, my guess is this house is all of 70 to 80 years old,
Yeah,
so.
probably does.
at least,
I mean, it probably had it at one time when it was horse and buggy, but when they widened the road,
110 is the center line.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's only 80 now.
So it's partial. Yeah, so I'll defer to Scott because he has the full plan in front of him, but yes, so right now it's a pre-existing non-conforming lot. With the creation of a new lot, it needs to then be brought into conformity. If it cannot be, then a variance to excuse that non-conformity can be sought from the zoning board. That has happened a couple of times in the last couple months.
In fact, we have one coming up tonight.
Yes.
okay.
So if you get that application in by the 10th of August, you would be on the September agenda for the zoning board.
Did you hear that, Jim?
I didn't hear all of it. Can I hear it again?
So in order to get on the September agenda for the zoning board, you would need to submit by by August 10th.
Okay, that's doable, sure.
It should be.
Oh, they say that.
And then it can typically be scheduled that we'll catch you the next time.
Yep.
So we'll end up having to table it and then come back to it the very next meeting if you get the variance.
Okay,
All right,
Okay, go to the
so,
September meeting.
well, so,
The
The-
September meeting.
yeah, the applicant was, they're looking at selling the house and the parcel, and the person purchasing it already has pre-approved mortgage, and they have 30 days to act, or they lose some type of incentive on the mortgage,
So what's their
That-
closing, what's their drop dead closing date?
30 days.
From when?
What did he tell me? I want to say it was at the end of August, I believe.
that was middle of August or so, right, somewhere in there.
He's got about 30 days to work with, or he loses the incentive for the mortgage.
Well, the only thing, I mean, again, I can't speak for the zoning board or this board. You'd have to have this board convene itself in August, and you'd have to have the zoning board be agreeable to waiving its application requirements and streamlining this thing.
I could pull some strings.
So we'd have to talk to Lee about whether that's feasible under these set of circumstances.
So even if it got to the zoning board in August, that would be on the 12th. The 17th is the next planning board meeting. It's only a couple of days later.
Right.
We've done that before.
We've done that before.
Yeah.
We've done that before.
I'm not available in August. We were
Right.
gonna plan on skipping August because we had no applications.
Oh, okay.
Could we conditionally approve it?
Well, that's
based on
what-
them getting the variance, and then we don't have to, I mean,
I
we
mean,
have all
how,
the comments, if he redoes the math.
right, and how's, I
I mean,
mean,
that's, John, you can speak to that, but I mean, just to make this.
Typically speaking, the planning board can act, and the planning board in the town of Rush defers to this, in order to approve a site plan, it has to be zoning compliant before it's approved. Or this is a subdivision.
Subdivision, right?
That is typically how we handle it. I'd have to give some thought to whether that could be done. Again, I mean, you're approving a subdivision that is not compliant and cannot be effectively finalized until such time as the zoning board acts in any event. So I don't know that you're gaining much time. I guess maybe you're trying to save a meeting in August.
And if it was small potatoes, but he said it was a $10,000 incentive
Yeah,
from what the applicant told me.
Well, I guess what I would suggest is maybe let's temporarily table it right now for purposes of tonight. Let me give some thought to that while you're reviewing the other matters, and let me see what I can find. I'd finish up any other questions you have, but let me look into this before we make a concrete decision.
Well, sorry for bringing that up. So my other question is, could you explain more about that 50-foot clearing line? I understand there is a power line that runs through there. I believe Moores have a barn pretty close on the other side. Does that restrict building in any way? What does that mean?
Well, I think it's more for the power company to have the ability to come in there and clear vegetation from the power lines going down through there, 50 feet either way of the center of the power lines. Right through that area, there's absolutely nothing in there. It's open field. I don't think there's a tree over there even, for that matter. But that really is has to do with the power line guys having the ability to keep 100-foot wide clearing swath down through there for their power lines.
Lot lines are as shown, but there's a 50-foot easement that the power company has to come and clear vegetation. Is that correct?
Would actually be 100-foot, 50 feet either side of the center. Yeah.
And that doesn't restrict
That's a big power line.
buildings or septic systems, or what does it restrict for the owners of the property?
Generally no building structures within that. Roadways, farmlands. I would think leach fields would be acceptable. It's underground. It's not something the power lines would interfere with, if you will, although running heavy equipment over it probably isn't good either. So I guess, but there's still enough room. If you look at my map, I put a distance on the 110-foot setback line, and I put a distance there of 109.29. See that one?
Well, that's what I was trying to get out of this conversation. And presumably, even if the power company did not want a house on that 50-foot clearance line, you could put it right next to it, right? You wouldn't even have to have a setback.
Yes,
So
you could.
it's available for building, and we never had one quite like this. I was just trying to understand what that meant.
Yeah, it's a little unusual, but we still have 109 feet of buildable area from the east side of the 50-foot clearing line all the way to the east property line or the ditch. We still have enough room in there to do our thing and not encroach in that 50-foot clearing area at all.
That's all I had.
Good question.
Rick, we are on the Moore subdivision. Was there any pressing issues that you had? Okay, all right.
Nothing at all.
Okay,
Oh, this house exists.
town board liaison.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Attorney for the town. I know you're working, so.
Easement for the power.
All right. Shelley, anybody in the audience? Okay, Shelley, do we have anybody with their hand up on Zoom? Okay, so with that, I'm going to make the motion that we, John, do we close the public hearing first and then
I would probably move on to the next set of things before, let me look into this.
We'll just leave it
Yeah,
open.
Leave it open for now.
all right, so we're gonna leave this application open. We're gonna move on to the first tabled application, which is 2021 01P by Bruce Howlett. Shelley, could you read the? We don't have a notice. Thank you. Sorry, Jim. Thank you. Jim, so we may be back revisiting this as John Mancuso digs into this to figure out how we could accomplish possibly doing this tonight, or if we have to table it, what the actions would need to be in the next few weeks, so we could try to help this applicant their situation.
Yeah, all right, we would appreciate that. If there's a waiver for the zoning compliance for that front setback, perhaps that's a way that we can go to it too. If we have to go to the zoning board, we will.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
So now we're on to the tabled application of 2021. We originally heard this application, I believe, March 16th of this year. And due to the lot lines being redrawn, it was creating both a flag lot and a setback. Is that correct? Is my memory correct on that?
There, yeah, there was the flag lot had to have a variance, right? So that was a 50-foot drive area. And there was an existing non-conformance, much like we got into on the last application with the two existing houses, or maybe a barn or something like that. I forget which it was. And there were driveway easements as well.
Okay. So the applicant did go to the zoning board of appeals, and they received an area variance on July 8th, 2021. And I guess let the record reflect, it was application 2021-07Z by the Rushtown Zoning Board of Appeals. And John, do I need to read this into the record? The whole variance?
No.
Just it was.
No,
But that was for the flag lot. And wasn't there an existing area variance for the setback problem? Is that what I heard?
historically, there was variance granted in the 60s. I think there was a historical variance, but the board adopted two variances, one for the flag, one for the side setback deficiency. So I think the property probably has three variances now.
You guys the variance.
Yes, and it does, Scott, it does note in here that the requested width and side setback variance. Four, do you have this?
Maybe I just got this one.
In the
No.
folder that.
I'll give you that. Scott.
Maybe. Just gonna pull out their sheets.
Yeah, you got it. All right, he's got it. Phil says, well, thank you.
I think I have an idea for how to solve this problem. Todd, what do you think about if they issue preliminary approval tonight, but don't issue final? Issue preliminary, have them go get the variance, come back and approve the final?
I like it, yeah.
I like it.
Okay,
And just Jeff will be signing that or Don.
It's not
Some-
final subdivision
yeah.
approval, you know, they can
We
come
have
back, the
three people
variance
to
gets
do that?
granted, then we'll condition preliminary, we'll condition the preliminary approval on getting the variance, they'll come back and satisfy the condition, then we can approve the final.
Without a meeting.
without a meeting on our end, but we
No,
have,
there'd be another, well, there would, we have 3 people for August.
We could do a
It-
special
it would-
meeting.
It would take,
Could,
I
I-
mean, this would take 5 to 10 minutes.
yeah, I mean, Don, I
You
guess,
just
would
need
you
three
guys,
people.
Scott,
You just need
or
three.
Steve would be here?
What's the
Except
August?
we can
Well,
make it any
We
day
can make it
you
any
want.
day
Yeah,
that
'cause
works
I'll
for
be
you.
gone 13.
Because we're not available on the,
There's
I
time
see.
enough to schedule it when you want, but the August 17th would be the normal day.
Well, that would be the middle of August unless you got an earlier meeting from the ZBA.
I'm gone
And-
13th to the 17th or 18th.
ZBA is on the 12th, so it has to be after that.
Right.
we're normally the 17th.
Yeah, I
So we
will
don't have
not.
3 people for the 17th.
I don't know about that.
No, we would have 3 people for the 17th, but I think, Don would, he knows I'm gonna be out of town, and if it's,
Oh, okay.
it's gonna be a 5-minute meeting, basically.
Right.
You could do
I could
Zoom.
always
it could
zoom
be a
in.
Zoom.
I could always
You
zoom
could
in.
Zoom in.
I could zoom in from where I am.
We'd have to notice, well, we'd have to notice it a particular way that might be, effectively, we'd have to notice it for your address of where you
Yeah.
are zooming in from. And if you're
Thousand
in
Islands.
the Thousand Islands,
Yeah.
if someone wants to fly down there and observe you in the meeting, then I guess we can do it that way.
You can do it. that way.
Scott, you're not available then?
I'm available.
You are, Steve? So if Steve, Don, and Scott are free,
And worst cases, I can zoom
and
in.
you could, yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
can.
Are you going to
we
like
can
the
get this
Florida
done.
Keys or
It's
something?
1,000 Islands.
Thousand Islands.
Oh,
We could, and, yeah, notice it that one of the members will be zooming in from
If we
this,
have to.
and you can do that.
Well, right now, we don't need to notice anything. If we hold it on the regularly scheduled meeting, we're fine. We don't need to do anything. So I guess my only question is, if Don isn't free,
Mhm.
then we may need to renotice a separate provision, but if he is, we have the 3 we need, and the 2 of you don't need to be here.
Okay, perfect.
I think Don would be in the
Just
area.
bring my laptop.
Yeah.
Depending on the time, he could just call in.
Even if we have to start at 7:30, or, if we have to start a little later just to get in and finish it and leave, I mean, that's not an issue on my end, at least. I'm sure we can accommodate the applicant.
I mean, it's a place, I'll be in Iowa. So, I mean, you could put me down, and if you can't get a hold of Don, if you need a third member, just get a hold of me.
We can
I
just
should
put your
have-
address in Iowa.
And the board chair can always call a special meeting. It doesn't need to be done tonight, so Don has the authority in the state law to call a meeting on his own. So we can do this if we have to,
You
at a
could
separate time.
do, you could do secret.
And it could be
We can
done,
do everything tonight, seeker and the
Yeah.
preliminary approval. And then it has to go to the zoning board for the variance, and then we just come back and approve the final. But we can do it, as long as the zoning board can hear this thing in August, it can get done in the next 30 days.
what's the notification for the zoning board? How much time do they need to schedule a hearing
well,
on
they're
this?
not gonna need to wait for any of the reviews from like Monroe County and everything, because they've already done them for
Yeah.
this. So, I'll send them in anyways. and ask
Check
them.
the 239M agreement. Are you aware of that agreement that we have with the county?
No, but I always send them in anyways.
Yeah, we
And if I
always-
say to them, can you do this quickly, the variance usually comes, they come back faster, so.
Yeah, so we have an agreement with the county that exempts certain things from 239M.
Oh, and a lot of
A lot of
our zoning.
zoning
ones.
work ones are on there. We do
Yes.
it, we nevertheless do it as a matter of course to get their
Yeah.
feedback in the event that there is something we should know about, but it may not technically be needed. Which
Right,
would speed this up. The only other thing then is the hearing notice. How much time do we need to get that on before August? Because there's only 20 days. between now and then.
my, right, but my deadline is, this Thursday, so.
Is Jim the salon right now? Tomorrow or 2 days from now?
2 days from
I
now.
think Jim.
She's
Jim
still
is
on
there.
It's just
Yeah.
muted.
Jim, are you still with us?
Jim, are you still there?
He's muted, so let's ask him to.
If Jim could get the application in tomorrow,
Right.
that would be helpful.
I don't think he can hear us. Maybe he walked away.
Let's see now.
As I say, Shelley, email or call them tomorrow morning.
Sorry, Dan, didn't mean to interrupt you.
All right, so we can resume back to the. Yeah, Rich Lang. Scott, you were going over something.
Well, is this the only variance we have?
It is.
Well, 7Z, it talks about a lot width variance at the setback line and the side setback line for lot 1. It does not mention lot 2, which is a flag lot.
What aspect of the flag lot do you believe to be a problem
Well, it's
besides the front setback?
the front setback.
Well, but the width at front setback was granted a variance.
Yeah.
And there's no building or other structure on the now subdivided lot.
Where does it say there's a variance for lot 2? Lot 2 is a flag lot.
Are you looking at?
No. This is the area. Yeah, so I guess there maybe grammatically there perhaps should have been a comma, but the lot with variance at the setback is for the flag lot. That's specifically what they reviewed at the meeting. So they did a lot with variance at the setback line for
Okay, well,
the flag and the side setback line for lot.
we'll clarify that in our resolution. That this is what we understand they meant. That's very poorly worded. And in fact, it's not what it says. Okay, we'll make that assumption. Everybody else is okay.
I'm okay with it. When I read this, it probably could have been worded from the zoning board with a little bit more detail. I agree. But I believe that's the gist of what they were looking at and why it got sent to them. All right. Any other board members, any comments on this? All right, town board liaison, town engineer.
No, we originally said we needed the easements for two different driveways
And
approved by the town attorney. Has that been approved?
that would be part of the condition.
Okay.
Yeah, that-
And I presume we're still going to the town engineer as well?
You have a copy of those, right, Scott?
Yeah, I have a copy of it.
From
Yes.
Welch and O'Donoghue.
Going back, because I don't know what we've already covered. Recommendations, but we wanted to see
Yeah,
septic as well.
the drainage easement, I asked for that.
We
The endangered species was checked and the conservation board asked what that species was.
Right. With bald eagle, I believe.
That's septic something.
I guess when we, rather than try to, let's get to the resolution
Yeah.
at that point, then we'll,
Address all
We'll-
engineers' comments too.
that's right, right, okay. Scott, anything else?
No, but I'm gonna make sure my list is complete when we get the resolution.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
And we can take our time and go through that. Because it has been a while, so. And would the minutes of the March meeting reflect what comments we had at the time? So we may-
Comments that we get.
Yeah, so we may have to pull those up, Shelley.
All right,
The March
we're
16th.
talking
actually,
about
I
the
got it.
Richland resources, right?
That's correct. All right, and John, this is not a public hearing at this point.
Did you close the public hearing or table it? The minutes would reflect that also. The March was the last time you heard this.
I believe so.
It was March
March
16th.
16th.
Yeah, which makes it.
You have the minutes?
I don't have the minutes, but I know.
Your notes said you were stable.
Yeah, we tabled it, I know that, but if we close the public
I
hearing.
don't, yeah, I don't remember that.
I just need to-
Oh, okay.
March 16th.
Tabled and.
All right, Scott has the minutes here, John, and all it says is that Scott made the motion to table the application. And I don't see on there where, oh, no, Deputy Chair made the motion to close public hearing. That's the
Brian
previous,
Andy.
that's the previous one. Okay,
Yeah, you closed the
Hearing,
public hearing.
Was closed.
yeah, I'm, on my notes, I have motion to close the public hearing and then motion to table.
Oh, that, my page is.
But it doesn't reflect that in those notes.
This is weird, because, well, you have the Howlett application on the public hearing and then public comments, and then followed by a motion on landing. Then a motion on Howlett to table.
Oh, so go back.
Yeah, I don't think it's closed. I think the public hearing is still open, so
All
I
right.
think you need to make a motion to close the public hearing.
All right. Do I need to ask if there's anybody with their hand up? So we'll have to wait for Shelley to come back. All right.
I don't see anybody in there. Dan Brennan, I believe, is the only person in the room right now.
Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Daniel Brennan, here on behalf of the applicant from Davidson Fink.
So you're the only, if you have anything else to add, Dan?
No, I don't, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Anyone in the public wish to?
no, all right, so there's nobody in the audience wants to talk to you right now, so we're gonna close the public hearing on the application 2021-1P by Bruce Howlett, Richland subdivision, East River Road.
Hold the board.
Hold the board, so we just closed the public hearing. Scott had the minutes for the March meeting.
I probably could have brought them up at the time. Member McPherson? Member Strack?
Aye.
Member Werzer?
Aye.
Deputy Chair Werner?
Aye. All right, the second tabled application is application 2021-8P by Jonathan Properties requesting site plan review approval to remove bushes in front of the current parking lot and add pavement up to the road to expand parking lot. The property is located at 95 High Tech Drive and is zoned limited industrial. Gentlemen, is this your application? No, okay. Do we have anybody on Zoom that is representing Jonathan Properties?
They had them last time.
We do not, because Daniel Brennan is for Richland Resources.
All right.
Again,
Here too. All right, so gentlemen, on this application, where we've been with this is we've gone round and round a little bit on definition of a landscape mall and how that relates to this property. And I'm glad Phyllis is here tonight because I had quite a conversation again with John Lindbeck, our building inspector, about landscape malls and how they pertain to applications on private roads, town roads, or I guess public roads. And Phyllis, please correct me if I am speaking out of turn, but it has been very clear between John Lindbeck, the building inspector, Lee Hetrick, the zoning board of appeals chair, and the town board, that this property is on a town road and is not subject to a landscape mall.
Exactly.
And in the process of all this, the town board realizes they have to redefine landscape malls, where it's placed in the town code, and actually redesigning a landscape mall with the help of the town engineer, Todd Ewell. Have I?
No, you summed it up perfectly.
Okay. So now with that, I've gone and looked at the property. I guess I'll give you my 2 cents on all this, because we've looked at the comments and I'm gonna get right to, I called Mark David today and I said, Mark, I need your help. This is what the applicant wants to do.
So this is the new revised, see, it's got a section.
I truly got this at 5:45 this afternoon from Mark, when he got done paving Fishel Road or putting stone and oil down. And because this is a town road, I figured, why not go to our highway superintendent? Who's gonna have the final say? And I know with town codes and things like that, but if the landscape mall doesn't apply to this, what does apply? And according to Mark David, basically, he went through, looked at the other parcels on High Tech Drive, and he came up with this map and gave it to me tonight to present to the planning board. And he went and did some measuring, and he said the parcel right next door has approximately 50 to 55 foot driveway with a little bit of a dog leg of lawn where the cars park. That's the old Lowell's Welding Shop. And for this parcel here, what Mark said is he has no problem with the removal of the bushes, moving the parking lot closer to High Tech Drive, but not all the way.
Looks like he's leaving a 6 foot.
He's leaving a 6 foot buffer for a certain portion of it. He says if they want to expand the driveway to 55 feet, and there, he's got written in, there's a stop ahead sign placed. He would like that sign left and untouched, and that small grass strip left. He said everything seems to slope towards the property away from High Tech Drive, so he has no problem with water coming onto High Tech Drive from this parcel. And so with that being said, and the landscape mall's not applying to this, I'm gonna open it up to the board for discussion.
Anybody here from Jennifer?
Second time, I don't think they were here last time. I don't think they came for the informal.
Oh, and I will add one more. Sorry to interrupt, as you're thinking. At the last planning board meeting, there was a statement made, I think by you or somebody, about outside storage. And is it temporary, is it permanent? And I did make that call to our code enforcement officer to assess the property for outside storage and see if it was long-term, short-term, and because as far as town code, outside storage is not allowed, I believe.
Neither are racks of any kind.
So Rick is in the process, and that call only happened a few days ago. And so Rick is going to stop by the property and address that.
Could catch the one next door too.
And probably along with 100 other parcels in town, Scott.
I wonder if this is a recent map, because I think what used to be Lowell's Welding has significantly increased their parking area.
You mean the
I'm not-
Google Earth one
I'm not positive.
just came in tonight, right?
Is this recent?
Jeff, the one that you just brought
Yeah,
in?
this,
Yeah, well, the Google Earth was taken
Right,
years
but
ago.
I don't know if,
Yeah,
well,
did Mark give you this? or-
Mark gave me this.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't remember them having 55 foot. I thought it was just a driveway and then it opened up, but I haven't been by there.
yeah, well, it's easy to check. The 55 feet, I wonder if he measured off of the map or on the real
he
property.
did a site visit. He did drive down, he did an actual site visit of the parcels. Or parcel.
Well, here's what I believe. I believe the 20-foot mall does apply wherever the property has blacktop interior to the property, such as in this case. If you look at the original properties in there, including the medical office, dental office, optimation, and Sealand, they all have 20-foot malls wherever they have blacktop parallel to the public highway. So I'm obviously in a minority, but I think the original design was intended to have a 20-foot mall with curbs interior to the property wherever it paralleled the public road.
And the original malls so required 12-inch
Well,
12-inch curves.
Yeah, but I'm guessing
They're
that's
not
part of
12
that's in the ground. I'm guessing that means, yeah, start with a 12-inch granite or concrete or whatever, and then you got blacktop on one side and dirt on the other side. So that's how I would rationalize the 12-inch. That same article or section says that the driveway can't be more than 25% of the width of the property, which I think would still be okay within the recommended 55 feet here.
Isn't there a determination of the code already, so we can't really.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can prove their point. Like, I'll only go back to what was there for the first 3 beautiful properties that were built there. But either way, I think they could open it up to this 55 feet. But my disagreement would be with making that 20 feet into whatever it is. That's why I wanted to see the original site plan for this, for the Jonathan, what's now the Jonathan property. I wanted to see what was specified on it and why it was specified.
And I received that email and I guess I thought my rationalization not to pull up the original site plan is it's a moot point. They're asking for something else now based on what currently exists on the property.
Well, here's.
And so very well, things change over time. Parking lots get expanded. If they did or didn't have approval to do it, I think we're dealing with what's at hand right now.
Well, interesting that that hedge is there, which is about 4 feet tall. Typically, 4 feet tall hedges are specified in the code to hide parking off hours. So it's one possibility why that was designed is because they have a special permit for parking overnight there, whether it was a different owner at the time or not. It's possible that that hedge was there to hide overnight parking, which is not allowed in the code. At least off-hour parking, however they define it. It says outside parking of vehicles or any other machinery or equipment except during business hours shall be permitted only upon issuance of a special permit by the planning board. So that would be the reason that that hedge was there.
Now, do we know what the hours of operation of this business is? Is it, could it be a 24-hour operation?
Could be.
So then there would be no offsite.
Well, that's why I wanted to see what was in the original permit. I wanted to understand the history of how we got to a 20-foot buffer there with a 4-foot hedge.
Mhm. Well, so is that, do you have anything else?
No, other than I'll keep reading. There shall be no outside storage of material raw, processed, or partially processed in bulk or packages except during actual construction on the site. There shall be no outside stockpiles or storage racks. All equipment for the handling of material and processes shall be enclosed in a suitable building.
Which is being looked at right now.
When we give approvals, we typically say one of the conditions is adhering to all other state and town laws. Right?
Correct. So if we go forward with this, with the changes, that would be part of the condition that they work with a code enforcement officer and address the outside storage.
Right.
So, I mean,
We're just tabling it tonight, I presume. There's nobody here.
do we need the applicant here?
Have they showed up at all?
No, I don't think they
I
ever.
mean, I would caution the board against approving something without speaking to them one time. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, do we know that this is actually, you know, how they're intending on proceeding with this application? I mean, they submitted it, but no one has showed up to even educate the board on what they're trying to accomplish. So I mean, I would suggest we try to get a hold of them. And I mean, you've noticed them, you've told them they're on the agenda.
Right, I have one contact person and it's an email address.
Did they ever answer you? Did they-
Yeah, she has several times.
Okay.
I've even told her about the meeting and
Okay,
when they mailed in the application wasn't, the questions weren't answered.
Have they
So-
answered the questions?
Well, no, I mean, the original application, it said the statement of intent was blank, so I had to email and ask what their intent was.
Did they respond?
Yes.
Okay. Is there
That's-
any other information? It sounds like there's other information the board would like from the applicant.
Absolutely.
well, and if we table it, by then we'll have information back from Rick Tracy
Right.
in findings for the outside storage, and we can either go ahead with it, or they may withdraw the application. So, all right, is everybody okay with that then? Then we'll just table the application. Sure.
Yeah, they
All right.
haven't addressed it.
They haven't addressed any of Todd's concerns or anything, right?
No,
Right.
so I guess there's no sense of going through them until we hear back from,
John-
because let's hear from Rick, because the outs,
Let's make sure they're serious.
Yeah.
They're actually in a hurry because it's been 2 meetings.
Right.
No
Right.
back. So,
I think they were supposed to come for informal, weren't they, and didn't show up?
Yeah.
I remember that.
do you want to make a
Do they
motion to
exist?
table it then, please?
Sure. Did we take it last time? What did we do last time? We never really opened it, did we?
I don't think you have to motion to
Do
table
we-
it if it's already.
I think that was just a discussion.
Do we have to just leave it tabled?
Yeah.
Okay,
September then,
all right,
to September, right? Because
it'll be
we're not
to September, yep. Gentlemen, you've been patiently waiting, very patiently waiting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
What can we do for you?
Should I come up there?
Sure.
You direct us.
No, come right up. Are you here with the informal
Yes,
Stony Brook Road?
yes.
All right.
Just, I don't know if you would like material or something to reference. Go through some notes.
The more the better.
Okay.
Well, seriously, what sometimes happens is people come and give us something very informal and we don't have a thorough enough understanding to give them good feedback.
Sure.
And that results in some misunderstanding, which creates our feelings.
Yes.
Yeah, no, you keep yours.
You got enough?
Because I want to make sure Shelley has one.
Oh, okay.
No. Oh, okay.
Okay, so go ahead and introduce yourselves.
I'm Kirk Spike, this is my father, Stephen.
Nice to meet you.
And we own the property together at 375 Stone Brook, which right now is, it's been a horse farm for, I guess, many years. It's still being operated.
It's a horse's friend,
Yes.
and it's still in operation?
Yes, it's they lease the property from us. So we initially did not purchase the property to keep it as a horse farm. We were going to tear the farms down and build a couple houses, but it's turned out to be an answer to them and gives us a little income.
In the meantime.
So
And
here's,
it's a it's different than the ones that ran the horse farm before. This is a man out of the city that does this as a service to children that grew up in the city and have no experience with horses.
They've been to the town board,
A
the horse's friend.
yeah. So at any rate, we're just, we've been having conversations. We initially purchased it to build two single residences there, at least two. I've got children, my brother has children. My kids are grown up, so there's potential there for them to do that as well. Kind of an heirloom kind of property is what we had in mind, something like that. So we since kind of thought about it and thought that we'd rather kind of think in terms of a duplex design with my father and my mother occupying one, my wife and I occupying the other. The challenges that we would like to try to do, have a clean estate division, which would require 2 mortgages to do this. As I understand, my feedback from the bank is that they would require there to be a subdivision through the middle of the house. And so, because for their purposes, they need 2 tax IDs in order to issue 2 mortgages.
2 mortgages.
So
Okay.
kind of we're here just to say, hey, what's the feedback for this? Schultz and Associates, who's the engineers that we have kind of enlisted to guide us on that site plan, have informed us that it's likely that this would have to be referred to zoning for variance on setback because of that. So, I guess in addition to that, are there other things that we should guide us on?
Well,
That's kind of the proposed, yes, that's.
Because I was looking at this, if you look at the same thing I am. So the blue line would be the property line, correct?
Yes.
I can share it with you, but thanks. So this would be the blue line, correct, for the property?
That's correct.
So this would be existing. Now, if I look at this, the first thing I would notice is the length of this driveway here. So if it's over, what is it, 200 feet, we would need, for one thing, you're gonna need to pull off emergency vehicle access. That would be the first thing. And how close would you be to this blue line too? Because this is probably gonna require a variance, right? If you look here,
even though it's existing driveway,
What is the blue line again?
it's the property line.
So the property line would go through the house?
Yeah,
Sorry.
So the subdivision line would just go right through the house? Now,
yeah,
is there,
no,
Yeah.
yeah,
entrance between the 2 homes?
Yeah.
An entrance.
Yeah, for like the kids to run through,
At this point,
Yeah, I mean,
I guess we're not sure
you're
yet.
not sure.
We're thinking that's probably not best at this
No.
point.
it's just it's one house, it's one building, right? Yeah,
Show us on this where the actual subdivision is.
There isn't one there. There's not one there
Oh.
yet.
So, but
That doesn't reflect subdivision. It just reflects the parcel as it is now versus.
So John, you understand what he's saying, right? They want to build a house.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
So they all can live in it.
Yeah, put a line
Have a
down through the
zero-
middle,
Have a property line. go
Zero.
down through the middle of the house,
0.
0 setback.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, I don't know what the word would say. That's different. I've never heard of it, honestly. So
unless you do it as an
So what
in-law.
would the address be then? You have two separate
Plus,
addresses?
off, sure,
You
like,
have one
you know, if it's
driveway?
right back here, how is the line go?
Yeah.
That, again, that's a preliminary from the site
Right.
plan before we had information back from the
Well,
from the bank.
so
We need two tax
I mean, the
IDs
fact, Scott,
in order to have.
you got one resident.
This isn't that,
So
this
you
isn't
want
the
to
shape of
finance,
this.
the issue
No,
is
This
the
is something
finance.
different.
Well, I
Because
think
you
we
want
have
to
the
use
entrance.
mortgages
maybe.
to finance.
Because this is wide.
Yeah.
Right, this is going back with the garage on the end. So this house rendering is not anything like the shape you've shown here.
Correct.
Which we've never,
We've never done.
never done.
We've never done.
But here's the thing, if somebody defaulted, you have two separate mortgages, but you're in the same, is there a dividing wall between the house?
Yes,
There would be
Be like a town,
like two townhouses
yeah.
just adjoining,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense, because you can buy a townhome or a condominium.
Right, but
That's
those are,
different.
the way those lots are configured in a townhome situation, they're typically done in a cluster sub,
Right.
where the surrounding property is not owned by the property owner.
It's owned by an
usually commonly
association
owned
or
By an HOA, and everyone uses it in common.
You
and
own
then
from
you
the
have-
drywall.
you have
in.
lots
Right.
where there's a party wall.
Yeah.
And then your tax IDs are effectively little squares that
Right.
are sitting within the cluster.
Yep.
So that's, I mean, that's fairly involved for what this ends up being, because you're talking about a two-lot cluster. I mean,
Well, you-
usually when you do it, it's, 20, 30.
You'd need
clusters
you'd need a rezoning too.
Mhm.
You can't put a townhouse in.
No, our current
townhouse in
zoning,
R3.
I don't think could equip it even in a cluster situation, because you'd have zero setbacks and a whole bunch of other things.
So is it?
That's what you'd have to do is an
Well,
in-law.
then
You're
the
showing
in-law
two equal
apartment is
sizes.
400 square feet, right? Scott?
Yeah. Well,
You
our
could-
town code is online and it's hard to find what you're looking for, but it's all there. The problem is finding it. Fundamentally, the town code in an R30 zone requires single-family homes. There are exceptions. And each of the buildings has to have side setbacks. Typically, it's minimum 25 feet to the property line. So there is no such thing as having a property line run down through middle of a house. You had previously mentioned, I think, an accessory apartment. That is not what qualifies here, because that situation refers to a main house, which has to be a certain size, and then the accessory apartment can be no larger than 25% of that, something like that. So you have two equals here, and that doesn't fit.
Talking about if you use the accessory, but is that something that would be equivalent term wise to?
Well, that would all have to be owned by one person.
Right, right. But I'm just saying that those two terms are interchangeable, in-law, accessory. is-
Yes, you think of it that way.
Here, I copied that off. That's our accessory apartment law.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So I don't think that applies if you're looking for two equal parts here. And again,
No,
that has to be owned by one person, and the occupant of the smaller residence, or the other residence, could be the bigger one, I suppose, has to be a relative or a domestic servant, or domestic employee, right? So you can't rent it out in the future. You'd have to sign an affidavit saying that I will not rent it out in the future, that type of thing. And in fact, that the person renting to fits those requirements. So that doesn't seem to fit here. There's nothing I know of that would let you split a building. And I can't imagine even the zoning board approving that. I can't speak for them, but that's pretty exceptional.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were thinking along the lines of a townhouse, but
Yeah.
based on what the
Yeah.
lawyer has said there, I realized that that's not feasible.
Now, there is a rather obscure part of the law that does allow, we're not real happy that this exists, but there is a part of the law that allows two houses, one building with two residences in it, essentially, a double occupancy house, but it has to be owned by one person.
The building of the building is feasible, but only in the sense that you need, that the mortgage becomes an issue.
Right.
That's the problem. I mean, you could build, there's ways to build something that is a multifamily, but your problem is gonna be, you can't split that mortgage. That you're gonna need to put one mortgage on one property for that house.
Yeah.
That's the problem. unless you subdivide, unless you have a physical subdivision of this lot into 2 lots, and then there's a house
Build
on
2
each
separate
lot,
houses.
and then you can separately mortgage each.
That would be the typical way to go, and in fact, you could have a shared driveway.
Correct.
The law does allow that, although we've never used it either.
And here.
You've never used the
you're up
shared.
The shared
against-
driveway.
you're up against those buildings too.
Essentially, one person owns a driveway, the other person has the easement.
Gotcha.
We have used it many 20 years ago.
Oh,
So, yeah.
Is that
Off of,
Sorry, is that something that you haven't used because people don't do it, or you haven't used it because?
generally what we, well, I guess I'll take the heat on this one. I'm not a fan of shared driveways because of bickering and fighting, and it's become issues.
Good fences make good neighbors.
And, you know, the one that we did quite a few years ago when I was on the planning board, and it's probably 25 years ago. It was parents and children sharing the driveway, and the parents owned all the surrounding land, and it was pretty much a no-brainer. But when you're talking a larger parcel like this, we generally have been asking for a 60-foot right-of-way for enough for a dedicated road to go
well,
back
I'm
in.
gonna counter that. The town doesn't want to be plowing or maintaining roads for 2 houses.
It could be a private road, but 60
Yeah.
foot, yeah.
Well, but that's the same issue. It's the same issue. You have to maintain it somehow.
Well, if it's private road, the owners have to maintain it.
Well, I'll give you a very specific current example. And I talked to a friend of mine in Victor who lives on a private drive with 3 houses, maybe 4 in fact. And the guy at the end of the street just put in a gunite pool, and they're running 30-ton concrete trucks back and forth over this road and destroyed it. So who's gonna repair it? That's the type of thing that you get into. Now, you won't have a problem with your family necessarily, but somewhere down the road, somebody's gonna pass away and somebody's gonna sell off, right? And then they're stuck with it. It still can be done, but Jeff is right, that it leads to problems, but it's allowed.
Scott, as an in-law, is there a size? Can the house be any size and then the in-law can be a percentage?
In fact, it has.
So
Is there a maximum square footage?
minimum in an R30 is 1,300 square feet
Minimum.
for the one family dwelling, and the accessory apartment, 400 is the minimum.
Yeah.
But could they put a 5,000 square foot home and then 25% of that can be there's no maximum, right?
Yes, 20, it can't be more than 25%, right?
Yeah.
The in-laws,
Right.
but as I say,
So-
can the whole structure be
Yeah,
5, 6, 7,000 can be a monster house?
Maximum is 800 square feet, I believe, for
The
in-law.
in-laws.
In-laws maximum.
Because otherwise it becomes essentially just a multifamily. I think that's the rationale behind trying to limit the in-law.
In-law size.
Right, we
Yeah.
have.
So in this, the optimum location for the driveway seems to be the same driveway that serves the horse farm. So would that mean that we would have difficulty using that driveway, extending it on to build a house?
You would still own it, right? You still own a horse farm,
Yes.
or one of you would? I guess I don't see that as a problem.
No, I don't see it as a problem.
There is, I think, preference to use that driveway simply because that is the top of a hill, and coming up, that gives us the furthest point north, south from the crest of that hill. So from a safety standpoint, I'm concerned for my parents driving out. If
Yeah,
we're trying to drive, add driveways going down the hill.
For
which
sight
is the only
distance.
way we can go.
Yeah.
So that, just so you know, that's my thinking is to appeal for our shared driveway if we do whatever we end up doing because of that. From a
So in the general contours, of course, they don't show any contours, but there's pretty steep ravines
Yeah,
here
it does.
that go down into Stony Brook. So the building is going to be very limited where they could place homes. If there were 2 homes, they're probably going to put both of them right back up here on this plateau behind the paddock area. That is existing, that's Miller's. Yeah, there's a house, the farmhouse that went with the horse farm, you can actually catch the roof right here. That was Yeoman's.
How large is that? How large is that? How large is that outline in blue yours?
That's about 20, just under 25 acres.
And is the horse farm, are there horses?
26 horses right now.
Yeah. but
Wow.
how did
They
you-
they have a website if you want to look them
We
up.
don't subdivide it.
I guess I had a question on when you said there are ways to go. You said it can't be done but one mortgage, right? That's one
Yeah,
person
you
owns it.
Right, so constructing a multifamily dwelling, I don't think is your issue. The issue is trying to mortgage it with two mortgages.
Right.
That, the only way you can do that is a cluster subdivision with a shared party wall, which we don't, in our code, we just don't have the provisions that would facilitate that in this context.
So would the planning board see what's, a duplex like this? Without that subdivision will do that. Would they see that as a single family, or would that be, in as much as we're father and son, would that be a single family, or would that be?
That's interesting. So if you didn't have the mortgage problem, you're saying, could you build one building and just have your father live there?
I would say you need a special permit from this board.
Right.
I think it would fall under 1, 2, provided, I would say, if you own the whole, if you own it, I think you just mentioned this 5 minutes ago, but if there's one owner, there's a two-family dwelling that can't go on a lot with a special permit.
Right, it's a duplex.
From the plan.
It's a duplex.
We had two houses on that same site. How far apart would they have to be?
25 feet from the lot line.
So
It's
50 feet.
setback, so 50
No, from
feet.
each other. though.
So-
Separate.
Yeah, from each other.
Yeah, so if a lot line went between the two houses, each house needs to be a minimum of 25 feet from the lot line in an R30 district.
Oh.
For side
So they'd
setback,
have to be 50 feet apart.
yeah. Now,
The lot line down the middle.
Breezeway up.
if they dug a tunnel between the
Right.
two, we don't know.
She's
I
fighting
just think
for us.
that-
Children, she's-
What's the advantage to building? I mean, it's a big structure. It's not like you're trying to build a prime house in a smaller,
Right.
So would you be opposed to just subdividing and building two?
It's just one dig, there's some economies of scale, I think, that we're trying to shoot for,
And-
knowing that we will, 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, we're gonna be, just gonna be healthy, so.
I hate to.
So we're just trying to stay,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's understandable, absolutely. But I guess so we've moved past trying to put a line down the middle, because quite frankly, I don't see that getting approved.
So
So,
one choice would be an in-law, right? As a
so one
possibility.
choice would be an in-law with a primary residence with an in-law,
Or subdivide the lot.
or,
Do a subdivision.
Can you put two
Three
houses on
choices.
one lot?
No,
no.
No,
You can only improve with one single family dwelling.
okay, all right, okay.
If we had two houses on that side, would we need, how far apart would driveways need to be if we want to come in with another driveway right at that same crest?
There is, in our town code, there is shared easement language for driveway. Even though we're careful on using that, but we frown upon it. But again, in a situation like this, due to the buildable nature of this parcel. So I'll stop there. We just did a plan last month and over the last few months of a larger parcel that had many more buildable acres. And we basically, I stuck to my guns and I wanted a 60-foot right of way going back in to the remaining lands that were being subdivided, because down the road, I could envision multiple homes going back in there. In a situation like this, maybe you could fit 3 to 4 homes back in there by the time you put septics, but I don't see much more being built. And if you use a single driveway with a shared easement for, say, 2 homes, you're gonna lock yourselves in also. I guess just know that any future development probably will not come easily.
from the standpoint of.
from the standpoint of gaining curb cuts, gaining access, just getting a usable driveway into the parcel.
The code says you can put as many as 4 houses on a private road, but no more than 4.
And the other, sorry to interrupt, but if you, in the future, say you want to create a lot in front of the horse barn and build a house right near the barns, well, then you're gonna potentially create a flag lot to the back homes that are existing, and that would require a variance in front of the zoning board. So it's not doable, but just more hoops to jump through. Sure. But to your initial question, can we have 2 houses with a shared driveway? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So.
I don't. So I guess as you go forward, if you have questions, please reach out to myself, Shelley. You can get my contact from Shelley. You can reach out to our building inspector, and we will work with the town attorney, town engineer, and you know, and
That's a beautiful,
go,
I love that.
go back and brainstorm a little bit and see what plan B or C might be.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good luck.
You can just email to him, or
Oh,
do you
yeah.
have it? Does she have your email?
She does. yeah.
Okay, just
Sounds good.
she'll email you my
Thank you very
contact.
much.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question on this topic for John. Almost
You're good.
a year ago,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
John Felsen sent to the town board an updated, talking now about in-law apartment, accessory apartment, sent a proposal, updated affidavit
Yes.
and some code changes, pretty minor,
Yep.
to the accessory apartment, section 120-61. Did anything come of that?
It has never been discussed by the town board, to my knowledge at this point. It was provided to them. I think it might have been, I don't know who it was provided to, whether it was a supervisor or whomever, but ultimately it hasn't been calendared for discussion.
Okay, the issues are big because that part of the code literally says that the applicants have to obtain a conditional permit,
Yeah. which
and there is no such thing. So that definitely needs to be changed, and there's a number of other lesser things that would benefit from a change.
You want to have the planning board resubmit that to the town board?
I believe I have the changes. I mean, if you'd like to bring it up as a discussion point at the next meeting and see where we want to go from here, you could direct me to prepare a local law if that's what the town board wishes to do.
Scott, can you email me a little bit just to give me?
Okay, I have the original note that was sent.
Yep. And I'll bring that up in.
I mean, we have a series of code issues.
That we need to.
The landscaping wall has now been raised as a problem, and there's revisions that have been proposed for that. So I mean, enough of these are, yeah.
We can start doing some. Yeah, okay.
There was also the building inspector raised a question about home occupations as well, which we do not have any provision in the town code to address either.
Yes, we had a few.
Which I've gotten a few phone calls. So it was all
Oh,
your phone
well,
calls.
that's the other thing that we're gonna have to talk about, and this is a town board issue, is are we gonna allow marijuana dispensaries in town?
And that has to be done by the end of the
December
year.
31st.
Yeah, you
Yep.
have to opt in or out. by-
Yep.
or do nothing or opt out. I should
Yeah,
say.
if we do nothing, we're in. If we choose something, yeah.
Probably already have them.
Well,
That's
but
not what
they're
you-
not legal. And we're not, and the only way for us to generate revenue from it is if we stay in.
Is it an agricultural crop?
Well,
Of course it
Maybe,
is.
maybe.
Yeah.
I actually asked that question at the presentation.
Well, that's the way the town of Henrietta wrote their codes, is that they will allow the dispensaries in agricultural areas.
Oh,
So the
okay.
regional market.
You're in. You got a nice barn, you're in an ag area, we'll set up shop over there.
I would suggest that be brought up sooner rather than later, because that will take many months. to probably
Yeah,
formulate. If it is a substantive.
Here,
I was told that the person that should be
how did
bringing
we
it
get
up would
from
have.
in-law apartments to marijuana dispensary?
Because every other.
Everything under the
Little
sun.
changes.
Yeah.
Or at least like.
All right, so with that, let's get to the resolutions. So the first one is going to be for the Newsome for 2021-10P. So so how about I start, and I'll just bear with me as I go through these, and we'll add our notes as we get down through. So John, can I start just so you can kind of have an ear to make sure I don't miss something?
Sure.
Okay.
And so if I could also just one thing before you jump into all of them. The seeker is only on the subdivision once, so we need to do something before we do the resolutions on the subdivision. So when we get to those, we'll take a step back for a second, but on the site plans, you can go right into the resolution.
Okay.
So for mayor, we do a site plan and a subdivision.
Yeah, we're gonna just wanna-
All right, so we're gonna start with Newsome, which is just a site plan. So this is resolution for application 2021-10P. Whereas the planning board of the town of Rush has examined application 2021-10P submitted by Eric Newsome requesting a site plan approval. The property is located at 8 Madeline's Way, Rush, New York, 14543, and is zoned R30. Requesting site plan approval to construct a single-family residence with the associated utilities at the same address. Tax map number is 219.04-1-33. And whereas the planning board has examined the application maps and other materials filed with the application, including the short EAF form, and all having reviewed all current site plans, building plans, environmental plans, and reports, comments and reports from the town professional staff, the public, and other interested and involved agencies associated with the application. And whereas the public hearing on the application was held on July 20th, 2021, and notice was posted as required by law. And whereas all persons at the hearing desiring to speak on the matter were heard, all correspondence on the matter was read, and all comments and statements that were received during the public hearing and or at other duly held meetings of the planning board were considered by the planning board. And now therefore be it resolved that the planning board determines that this is a type 2 action exempt from, type 2 exempt from seeker review pursuant to subsection 617.5 C11 of Title 6 of New York Code of Rules and Regulations concerning the construction of a single-family residence, including provision of necessary utility connections. And it is further resolved that upon consideration by the planning board of the factors set forth under subsection 120-69B3 of the town zoning law, including the location and arrangement of buildings on the property, adequacy, type and arrangement of trees, shrubs, and other landscaping constituting a buffer between this and adjoining lands, adequacy of separate disposal of stormwater and sanitary waste, and protection of adjacent properties. The planning board grants site plan approval, and it is further resolved that site plan approval is granted subject to the following conditions. 1, no work is to commence until the applicant obtains a building permit from the town of Rush. The applicant 2, the applicant must meet any other applicable town building and inspection requirements. 3, the applicant shall meet all requirements of the town engineer as indicated in the town's engineer letter dated. Does somebody have that out for a date? Dated June 30th, 2021. Okay, and then that's as far as, and now we can add from there.
So I left those 3 on there just because they seem to be typically generic.
Yes, generic, right.
I didn't, like, if you want them removed, just say so.
I guess let's, no, let's leave those on there because those are gonna pretty much follow through. Let's make a note that we are in agreement with the applicant that no ag data statement will be needed due to the proximity of the parcel in regards to agriculture lands located within the southeastern ag district, I believe would be the wording.
Do you need to add that in the resolution that no data statement is needed?
I think add it
Okay.
because one of the comments from Hunter County was asking that it should be added, and let's note that we made the determination, as long as the rest of the board agrees with me, and agrees with the applicant that it's not pertinent because of the location and the distance to other lands. The applicant will need approval from town engineer, the town highway superintendent, Monroe County Department of Health for septic. Who else? That's it. Did we ever address a driveway pull off with this applicant?
We can talk about it.
Anthony's right here.
Yeah, no, Anthony, so hold that thought. Let's take a look at
It was a while
yeah.
ago.
But I don't know how you would do one.
Yeah, is there space?
I mean, basically, you've got the hammerhead at Madeline's Way.
Gonna have to be over 200 feet.
Well, and that's why I wanted to look at the plan, if it's over 200 feet.
No, you should ask them how long the driveway.
Anthony, how long is the driveway going to be off of the hammerhead?
I believe that it should be 400, and 200 up to the turnaround. They're gonna bypass, I mean, 200 is awfully short. To require pull off. It's just not that far.
It's not, and I don't know, is it based on what their hoses and what, that was added quite a while ago. And we're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hammerhead would be up at the end, basically Madeline's Way where the driveways come off.
So the note on C2 calls out approximately 470.
Okay. Well, and John, correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, but if there was a crisis on this parcel or the neighboring parcel where the fire department had to acquire use of either driveway for equipment, can the fire department do that?
Acquire it.
Temporarily for the crisis.
Well, I think the answer is Yes, with a big caveat though, I mean, we're not approving this to code to give them the necessary fire access that they would be afforded under the building and fire prevention and our own code for design criteria. Because I think that, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think under the uniform code itself, there would be specific requirements for fire safety of a driveway of that length. And the engineer for the applicant wants to chime in.
Can I
You're
see
paving
that?
it.
How long is
It's
it?
far from the limit. It's not that far. If they want to stretch a hose.
Well, that's right, but if you had got, I mean, they're not gonna stretch a hose across the lot that way. They're gonna lay the hose up the driveway.
Wouldn't it go across the line? In the winter? Could be.
I mean, I
But
think
it
the
could,
the question.
I mean, slope, you're talking 15. Right, from the hammerhead to the residence, Scott's pointing out on the map, from the actual hammerhead to the residence, because of the loop in the driveway, it's less than, it's probably 200 feet. It's just the design of the driveway, because it's on a side slope, creates a 400-foot drive.
So my only,
It's a switchback essentially.
Yeah,
my only question for the engineers would be, is there anything that the town planning board should be concerned about as they look at this site plan, that if you try to pull a building permit, you're not gonna be able to comply with the building code and therefore need a modification of your site plan? Because if the answer is you have to get a modification, you may as well solve this problem now than after you're trying to get a set of plans approved. But that's and I don't know the answer to that question from a design standpoint, whether there is a fire access issue.
I don't see an issue. I don't know that the fire chief commented on this either.
No, not yet.
Oh, he did.
not yet.
Oh.
But
Yeah.
they're meeting tonight,
I
so.
mean, technically, it's over 280 feet, they require a pull-off, whether it's on a slope or not, they can level out, one side or the other. Is it really practical? You've got another road just at the turn, just below, 2 feet separation. They can park in the hammerhead and run hoses, I don't know if there's any, do the same thing. There's no hydrant there. This has water service, though.
No,
No, there's no
no,
water.
there's no water there. It would be well.
It's a well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's a well there, so. I don't see a problem, but.
Anthony, do you see the possibility of, I guess, if we just ask for a 40-foot long, 20-foot wide pull-off halfway up the driveway? Is there room to build one of those into the design? It would be gravel, doesn't have to be paved, but it has to be substantial enough. The idea is to hold a fire truck, if a fire truck had to pull off, to be a additional pumper to get water up to the residents.
Between the septic system and going around the bend, which I think would possibly make sense to have that situated there. With respect to the driveway layout, it is a little longer than what was originally proposed in the NOAC subdivision, but it essentially follows the same layout. Around the southern, southeastern property lines.
And I guess as I think about this, the NOAC Drive, I'm not so sure that has pull-offs because that was built way back in the 70s. So, I mean, in a situation like this, the two driveways are going to complement each other for multiple reasons.
I think maybe 120, 150 feet here.
But it's not on driveway.
I mean, ultimately, if you condition the site plan approval on meeting all applicable requirements of the building and fire prevention code, if they can't design this to meet that, they may have to come back to you to modify the plan. And that's more of a risk on the applicant if they have to do this fit the, uniform and fire prevention code. So as long as there's a condition in place, they can't really pull a permit unless they need it. And in order to, I mean, again, the fire code is, and our design details will drive the suitability of fire access.
The code enforcement officer and the building inspector both get these applications with plans.
So he'd have to be, John Limbeck's gonna have to be comfortable that as designed, this meets all the applicable provisions of the fire prevention code, including everything having to do with fire access.
To make that a condition.
All right,
So to make it a condition that this board is covered, the applicant's gonna need to make sure they can meet that.
okay, all right, so then Anthony, we're gonna add that, so I guess be prepared to address that down the road, because I'm sure the building inspector will be talking to you about that. And we'll see if we get comments back from the fire commissioners.
Right.
Maybe they'll have a different take on the two driveways and they'll work with John Limbeck, so that way you're not, so basically I'm saying, don't be surprised, but you're covered, so, all right, so as another contingency that it needs, the project application needs to meet the building codes in regards to, John, help me with language, but
The
fire.
applicant shall meet all requirements of the building and fire prevention code with respect to, well, I would just say let's just leave it at building and fire prevention.
Okay,
Yeah, what is the driveway material? I don't see it anywhere. It calls out the driveway. Is it stone or is it paved? Is there a section?
No section was provided on C3, I don't think, the detail sheet, it should be.
So you want to add that, put that as a condition? like
Okay.
Add the section and then.
so we're down
Pressure
to, are we at 6, Shelley?
Now we're up to 7.
7, so condition 7 will be that the applicant add a,
Driveway section detail meeting NFPA standards acceptable to the fire chief and building code enforcement officer.
Okay.
But, we have driveway details, you can look at that, pressure running asphalt. So,
right, that should just be a cut and paste.
yeah, you should be able to.
Driveway. Okay. All right, was Steve, Scott, were the other items that were, okay.
Good catch with the driveway.
I didn't either. And then, yeah, to the end, so that's why we go through things multiple times. So with that, that's it. So I'll make, that's the motion. Do we have a second? Scott, Steve seconded.
Member McPherson,
Aye.
member Strack,
Aye.
member Werzer,
Aye.
deputy chair Werner.
Aye. Anthony, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. I'm sure I'll be talking to you.
All right, so the next one is application 2021-11P, the Meyer site plan and subdivision. So it would make sense that we do the subdivision first, resolution, and then the site plan.
Maybe you need to pull out the secret forms for this one.
Yeah, you wanted to do the seeker first, is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
So, this is an unlisted action under seeker for purposes of subdivision approval and it doesn't involve the physical. Well, actually it involves the construction of a single family residence, which that in and of itself is a type 2 action. The subdivision is an unlisted. So the construction part is actually exempt from seeker because it's of minimal impact. So with the short EAF 2 and 3, you just need to go through the questions as you've done, as you did for the last meeting, and then make a conclusion on part 3 as to whether to issue a negative declaration or positive declaration. Not to speak for the board, I suspect that the answers to those questions will likely be no for all of them, but if you'd like to walk through them one by one, we can do so.
If we can say they're all no, I'm okay with that.
Okay,
I do not have a problem with that.
okay,
I'd like to say they're
I
all
don't
no.
either. All right, so on part two, questions 1 through 11 on the short EAF. They'll all be no, and then on part 3, we will issue a negative declaration. Is that
Okay, so-
correct?
Yes, so if you determine that the questions on part 2 are all no or small impact, then part 3, you check the box that you determined that project, the proposed action will not result in any
All right.
significant adverse impacts. That's the second of the 2 boxes.
All right, so check this box if you have determined, based on the information and analysis above, and any supporting documentation that the proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts. Are we all in agreement of that?
We gotta pull that, right?
Yes, I would.
Yeah,
Okay, so you all have a blank one, so one of you fill out
I have,
Yeah,
for one,
the
okay.
chair fill out the questions and check the box, and then you pull the board for the issuance of a negative declaration.
Okay, Member McPherson, Member Strack,
Aye.
Member Werzer,
Aye.
Deputy Chair Werner.
aye.
So with that, you can then turn to the subdivision resolution.
All right, so hang on just a minute.
Well, no hurry, I'm just trying to
I want the
think about what we cover in the subdivision versus the site plan.
That's okay. We got time. Just want the original application. With the original, I do. You have it, okay. That's what I got it here. Got it, I got it, just had it under. All right, so this is a subdivision resolution for the mayor subdivision, whereas the planning board of the town of Rush has examined application 2021-11P submitted by Tom and Sharon Mayer requesting a subdivision and site plan approval. Property is located at 8800 West Henrietta Road, Rush, New York, 14543, and is zoned R30. They're requesting subdivision approval. Got the address. And whereas planning board has examined the application maps and other materials filed with the application, including part 1 of the short EAF, and having reviewed all current site plans, building plans, environmental plans, reports, comments, reports of the town, professional staff, the public, and other interested and involved agencies associated with the application. And whereas a public hearing on the application was held on July 20th, 2021, and notice was posted as required by law. And whereas all persons at the hearing desiring to speak on the matter were heard, all correspondence on the matter was read, and all comments and statements that were received during the public hearing and or at other duly held meetings of the planning board were considered by the planning board. And now therefore be it resolved that the planning board determines that this is an unlisted action under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law and the regulations adopted pursuant thereto at 6 NYCRR Part 617 as amended. And it is further resolved that the planning board has considered the significance of the proposed subdivision by reviewing and examining the EAF, including completing the analysis for parts 2 and 3 of the EAF for the proposed subdivision, which EAF is hereby approved, adopted, and incorporated herein by reference. And it is further resolved that the planning board has considered the criteria set forth in 6 NYCRR subsection 617.7C, thoroughly analyzing the identified areas of relevant environmental concern, and hereby finds, for the reasons set forth in the completed EAF, that the proposed subdivision will result in no significant adverse environmental impacts, requiring the preparation of an environmental impact statement, and thus issues a negative declaration for the proposed subdivision. And it is further resolved that in accordance with the requirements of New York Town Law and Chapter 100 of the Code of the Town of Rush, the Planning Board grants preliminary approval of the proposed subdivision, subject to the following conditions. That the applicant obtaining the approval of the town engineer, the New York State Department of Transportation, Monroe County Department of Health. 2, that the applicant complying with all local, state, and federal laws. All right, 3 is on to ours. So we also needed to add that the remaining lands are not approved for building.
Good. There's a drainage easement on that too,
I'm
right?
sorry, say that again, the
The
remaining.
remaining lands are to be labeled not approved for building. The drainage easement is existing.
Oh, that's right.
On the remaining.
Shall we
parcels.
state that somehow?
So in a situation like this, John it would be a lot 1, lot 2 of the mayor subdivision. Wouldn't he start labeling things? Because like this, the existing lot that was subdivided off many years ago is, so one lot was already subdivided off. This would be a second lot subdivided off.
Is it already happened? Subdivision? Designation?
Mayor?
Mayor.
I have, you know what?
Yeah,
Put it out.
So this would be,
Here it is.
rear and top subdivision.
subject parcel.
Mayor,
Okay, so,
subdivision lot 2 being part of the lot 1 of the Greer and Todd subdivision in town lot 35, township 11, range 7 of the Phelps and Gorham purchase.
okay,
That is the official title.
yep, so that needs to be added to the record then.
I don't put it in a lot of my communications because it's a whole paragraph.
Yeah,
All right.
for some reason, John would always add that, and I guess in this case, because
Yeah,
this
I
way you
will.
start keeping track of as they develop lots.
So do you want that to be listed in the in the conditions, or should it be at the beginning?
Actually, I probably, I would assume it would be in the beginning, under the application number
Yep.
and the description of the subdivision,
Right.
Shelley, is where it says, insert description of subdivision. So that's where the description of the subdivision should go, where the mayor subdivision lot 2 being part of lot 1,
So that way you don't need to add it in the conditions.
right?
So it's basically the 3rd subdivision, right? Or the Gorham purchase, and then the Greer and Todd subdivision, and now it's the mayor subdivision.
The Greer and Todd would be the first of the Phelps.
Right.
Mayor would be the
Okay,
second.
got you.
Yeah, I mean,
Help with that.
you've got the title on the map.
Just follow the title.
Yeah. I mean,
Because that title is
And they're
what
gonna
Monroe
find-
County Department of
Yeah, they
Planning and
decide.
they're gonna decide that.
So this whole thing is lot 1 of the rear subdivision,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, this is
And this is lot 2 of the lot
of the
1.
lot 1, right? Previous.
No, there's another existing lot further north. So this would be the second lot subdivided off of this parcel, but it's,
Part of lot 1.
It's part of lot 1. It's lot 2. They're
So-
labeling it lot 2.
Yeah, they're calling it
Part of
lot
lot
1.
1. Yeah.
So the original Greer property was both sides of 15, and the Helios is formerly Greer property. So this would have been a subdivision of the parcels, I believe. We're going back to the
Wow.
60s or 70s.
So the big lot was lot 1 of the rear and Todd subdivision. right?
Okay, yeah.
And this is lot 1 of the mayor subdivision. This is lot 2 of the mayor
Yeah,
subdivision.
there you go.
There should be a limit to how long a title can be.
Well, I think if you put what's on the map here, you're good.
Yeah, that's what I. Calling it the mayor subdivision. Site plans with you guys, but in all of my.
Yeah, no, you're doing good.
So, yeah, Jeff, there are a few.
It's a mouthful.
You probably get the ag
go
note,
ahead.
you wanted the ag note.
The ag, okay, so Shelley, we're gonna want the ag note added to the plan.
Ag data sheet.
Our boilerplate ag note for town of Rush. That, the lot is, or
I'll have Todd
the
give it to me.
the subdivision is located within 500 feet of an active ag.
Gotcha.
You had edit the seeker, that was Scott for the sump discharge.
Yeah, what do we
Well,
want?
can we add a whereas, the drainage easement is not needed on lot 1 of the Greer subdivision because of a prior easement or something
Already
like that.
exists.
Okay, so is,
He had it on the map too.
On lot 1.
Of the Greer
so
subdivision.
it's not part of the conditions. Scott just wants to make a note that the drainage easement currently, a drainage easement currently exists on lot 1 of the mayor subdivision.
So it's not a
Greer and Todd
condition, but
It's
we
not a
would put it
condition, but
somewhere.
he wants to add it in as a whereas,
Well, it's lot 1 of the Greer and Todd subdivision.
rear Todd subdivision.
Whereas a drainage easement already exists on lot 1 of the Greer and Todd
And
subdivision,
is not needed.
and therefore is not needed.
Did you have
And
another
we
one?
need a SHPO letter too, right?
Just the sump is seeker. You wanted to modify the seeker to be checked.
Oh, that's
you
right.
wanted to
Number
check
set,
yes.
was it 12 or 17 of your seeker? You wanted, for the water.
Oh,
for the
yeah, that too.
discharge.
But didn't we need the SHPO letter because they checked a yes?
Yeah. Oh, it was stormwater damage.
Well, there's 2 of them. Yeah, they, 12B, they checked project site adjacent to a sensitive area. They checked yes. So we need the SHPO letter.
That's right, because he said that, remember, he was going over the overview, so we need to, and he said he would get that, a negative, declaration or whatever for the SHPO.
Oh, there was, engineering.
Yeah, the Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald, okay.
Yep. And then Scott had so how do we want to handle the discharge of the sump?
Well, do we require them, or do we just check yes for discharge, but state that it's intermittent and viewed as not a problem?
Well, that's what I wrote
So-
down was some discharge is intermittent and will not flow towards any residential structure.
Oh, you're
That's
talking
true
about
now.
water.
Okay. All right, so that was on the short EAF, Shelley, item 17. That the applicant had it checked, no. But the board agrees that it is a yes.
Yes, I wrote that on.
You
the-
got all
yes.
that, okay? So that, is that a condition or is that
No.
a statement?
It's a statement, it's a whereas, I think.
So we added as a whereas.
Or whereas that the short EAF was amended?
I don't know how to do this.
John?
Sorry.
No, that's okay. On the short EAF, we're going to amend one of the questions, number 17. The applicant had it marked no for water discharge. We're gonna say yes,
Okay.
but with the
Yeah.
detail of why we're saying yes. And all we gotta do is put it as a whereas that may, how do we note that we change that for the,
Are you amending it just for purposes of the record?
yes.
Yeah, then I don't know that you need to put it in the resolution as much as you just need to make note of the fact that your evaluation of that question leads you to a different conclusion than what's stated in PEAF.
Okay,
So it's not part of the resolution. It's not part of the condition.
it should be be added in the minutes.
All right, gotcha.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, that was it?
Yes.
Okay.
I took the opportunity of this little bit of silence, and I'm like,
Okay.
I'm going for
Nailing
it.
it.
Okay, so who seconded that?
I did.
It was Rick. Member McPherson,
That was smooth, wasn't it, fellas?
member Strock,
Aye.
member Werzer,
Aye.
deputy chair Werner.
Aye.
Okay, now we have to do the site plan for them, right? Or we,
Oh, that's right.
Oh, that's right.
Preliminary
Yes.
conditional approval.
Oh, that's right.
Did you?
So we didn't Right.
All right, so I'm back at it, unless somebody else wants to do this.
Doing a great job.
All right, that's fine. We'll just get going here. Whereas planning board Town of Russia has examined application 2021-11P submitted by Thomas and Sharon Mayer requesting a site plan approval. Property is located 8800 West Henrietta Road, Rush, New York, 14543, and is zoned R30. Tax map number is
You want it right here?
226.02-1-5.1.
This is the Moore Family Farm?
No, we're doing the, we're doing the
We're
site
doing
plan.
site plan for Meyer now.
Oh.
Because we did subdivision, now we gotta do site plan. Whereas planning board has examined the application maps and other materials filed with the application, including the short EAF form and all having reviewed all current site plans, building plans, environmental plans, reports, comments, and reports from the town professional staff, public, and other interested and involved agencies associated with the application. And whereas a public hearing on the application was held on July 20th, 2021, and notice was posted as required by law. And whereas all persons at the meeting desiring to speak on the matter were heard, all correspondence on the matter was read, and all comments and statements that were received during the public hearing and or at other duly held meetings of the planning board were considered by the planning board. And now therefore be it resolved that the planning board determines that this is a type 2 action exempt from seeker review pursuant to subsection 617.5 C11 of Title 6 New York Code of Rules and Regulations concerning the construction of a single-family residence, including provision of necessary utility connections. And is further resolved that upon consideration by the planning board of the factors set forth under subsection 120-69B3 of the town zoning law, including the location and arrangement of buildings on the property, adequacy, type, and arrangement of trees, shrubs, and other landscaping constituting buffer between this and adjoining lands, adequacy of separate disposal of stormwater and sanitary waste, and protection of adjacent properties, the planning board grants site plan approval. And it is further resolved that site plan approval is granted subject to the following conditions. 1, no work is to commence until the applicant obtains a building permit from the town of Rush. 2, the applicant must meet any other applicable town building and inspection requirements. 3, the applicant shall meet all requirements of the town engineer as indicated in the town engineer's letter dated
July 7th.
July 7th.
That's what I got.
Okay, July 7th, 2021. Other conditions, because the length of the driveway, they needed a pull off also, correct?
That's on Todd's letter.
Okay,
So Todd took care of that condition. Thanks, Todd.
Actually,
so actually, I said that they're gonna need Monroe County Department of Health on the subdivision, but it's actually on the site plan, because it wouldn't necessarily, they wouldn't need Department of Health on the subdivision. It belongs with the site plan. Now that we're doing them separately rather than combined
Actually,
like
the
in the
Department of
past.
Health takes care of that. We don't have to get
Okay.
it. They send it to us.
Okay, so were there other things,
Well,
Scott, that were
well, we said
pertaining
we
just to the
we don't need
residents?
to say anything about the sump discharge, it's just a document, right? Or document on the notes,
Right.
but that would be the site plan, there,
That
that
would
would
be
be the
site
site
plan.
plan too, not the subdivision.
So Scott's comment or the comment from the board regarding the correction of item 17 on the short EAF in regards to water discharge actually should be noted in the minutes when you draft them for site plan versus subdivision. because that had more to do with the actual building of the house than did subdividing of land.
Got you.
Okay. Is there anything else?
No.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Member McPherson,
Aye.
member Straugh,
Aye.
member Werzer,
Aye.
deputy chair Werner.
Aye.
Now editorial, the previous administration had planned to separate the applications for site plans and subdivisions, okay, to avoid the confusion that we went through.
Right, and as I took a stab at drawing some resolutions up, I actually went back through 10 to 12 years of minutes. And in those minutes, there was absolutely no consistency from application to application that was boilerplate. It was whatever was drafted at the time, and he wung it from his hip, and it was site plan subdivision type 2. It was, I mean, if you want to poke holes through stuff.
It's so that
You-
people pay attention.
So the fact that Attorney Mancuso, we now have 2 resolutions. Thank you. And we have this in front of us. These are the drafts that we will use. So now everything should be consistent going forward. It was amazing how inconsistent things were. So, all right, enough said on that. There, I chimed in on that. The next one would be application 2021-12P by Moore Family Farms requesting a subdivision. So, whereas the planning board is seeker.
Seeker first.
Yeah.
So you've done one
Thank
tonight
you.
already. I'll
Yep.
leave it to your discretion to go through part 2 and part 3 again.
Okay.
Now, more is, I heard back from Jim Missile, and he's
And,
gonna work
yeah,
on
we're
the
gonna do a
including of
preliminary
the
on this one.
application tomorrow.
For August.
Yeah, for the variance.
All right, so as far as part 2, does everybody agree on the board that the impacts will be no or small impact for questions 1 through 11?
Yes.
Okay,
There's no construction proposed.
no construction. All right, so then does the board agree that on part 3, determination of significance, that I will check this box you have determined based on the information and analysis above and any supporting documentation that the proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts.
Yes.
Okay. So Shelley, can you pull the board for that, please?
Member McPherson,
Aye.
member Straugh,
Aye.
member Werzer,
Aye.
deputy chair Werner.
Aye. Now with that being completed,
So someone filled that out, right?
what's that?
Or-
I will,
Got it.
I will make sure you have
Okay.
these
I
for the
just wanted to
record.
make sure.
Yeah. All right, so on to the resolution for subdivision of the Moore Family Farm property. So whereas,
One thing I'll say just before you get to these, so the only one on this not to do is gonna be the last paragraph. We're gonna
Correct.
Leave off the final,
correct,
and then you'll have a condition that speaks to the variance. And we'll insert a word when you get down to the bottom. We'll just put, yeah, it has the preliminary approval, so we're all set on that. So
Okay.
Just the last paragraph we'll have to strike.
whereas the planning board of the town of Rush has examined application 2021-12P submitted by Moore Family Farms LLC requesting a subdivision for proposed division of a 2.5 acre parcel into 2 lots. Property is located at 786 Rush Scottsville Road, Rush, New York, 14543, and is zoned R30. Whereas the planning board has examined the application, maps, and other materials filed with the application, including part 1 of the short EAF, And all having reviewed all current site plans, building plans, environmental plans and reports, comments and reports from the town professional staff, the public and other interested involved agencies associated with the application. And whereas public hearing on the application was held on July 20th, 2021, and notice was posted as required by law. And whereas all persons at the hearing desiring to speak on the matter were heard, all correspondence on the matter was read, and all comments and statements that were received during the public hearing and or at other duly held meetings of the planning board were considered by the planning board. And now therefore be it resolved that the planning board determines that this is a type, this is an unlisted action. I'll learn that eventually. Under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law, and the regulations adopted pursuant thereto at 6 NYC RR Part 617 as amended collectively seeker. It is further resolved that the planning board has considered the significance of the proposed subdivision by reviewing and examining the EAF, including completing the analysis for parts 2 and 3 of the EAF for the proposed subdivision, which EAF is hereby approved, adopted, and incorporated herein by reference. And is further resolved that the planning board has considered the criteria set forth in 6 NYC RR subsection 617.7C, thoroughly analyzing the identified areas of relevant environmental concern, hereby finds for the reasons set forth in the completed EAF that the proposed subdivision will result in no significant adverse environmental impacts requiring the preparation of the environmental impact statement, and thus issues a negative declaration for the proposed subdivision. And is further resolved in accordance with the requirements of New York Town Law of Chapter 100 Code of Town of Rush, the planning board grants preliminary approval of the proposed subdivision subject to the following conditions: that the applicant obtaining the approval of the town engineer, town highway superintendent. Who else? Any, it's a state road, but they're not, there's no building,
There's no
right?
buildings.
No.
There's-
So you wouldn't need the highway superintendent, so it's just the town engineer. And there's no septic or anything, so you don't need Monroe County Department of Health. The applicant complying with all local, state and federal laws, that would be number 2, Shelley. And then number 3 is where we will add.
So number 1 was
Number
Todd's
one,
list.
Todd's list.
Okay. So we wanted a water service on the map.
Okay, number 3 is that the applicant show the existing water service. Or do we just say general utilities?
No, water and septic.
Show water.
Water
So be
septic's on
specific.
Todd's list.
Okay, so be specific. Okay, so we want the applicant to show the water, existing water service supplying the residents on lot 2.
So just water is number 3, and then we're gonna put septic as the next one.
The septic's already on Todd's list.
Oh, septic's on Todd's list.
Yeah.
So do we need to state that the applicant needs to comply with all of Todd's comments?
We
Or is
did. That would be in number 1.
It's inferred in that, okay,
Yes.
got it.
If you want
All right.
If you want to be,
If I wanna add the verbiage of.
yeah, I mean,
Like it's.
So,
the applicant obtained the approval of town engineer.
yeah,
Is the statement.
Yeah.
Number 1.
Want to ask that meet all requirements.
Meet all
as
re-
indicated
we
in the
should.
Letter
Yeah.
dated
yeah, okay.
July.
July
9th.
9th, 2021. Okay. All right, so that was, we were down to 3, now we're up to 4. So is 4 going to be the variance required?
It's the only other one I have.
Okay, so number 4, Shelley, is gonna be that the applicant obtain a variance with the zoning board of appeals for the existing residents
For this, the front setback,
for front, regarding front setback
for the existing residents on lot 2.
on lot 2.
Setback,
And how
right?
about at the address, which was what, 786 Rush? Yeah, at address 786 Rush Scottsville
What
Road.
date, what's that date was granted?
No, we don't have it yet. So we're gonna end up, that was right before you, I think you got here.
Oh.
So we can't go any further with this application
I
because
see.
the
So
house
what
is
is
too close
this
to the road.
actual
I see what you're saying.
variance application going to state? He needs to get
Front setback
I see.
variance,
front setback.
front
Is there an
setback.
amount?
Well, it's got to meet town code, which would be 100. Well, it doesn't have to meet, it's a variance, so.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's existing, I mean, it's an existing home, but the reason they have to do it is because they're going through subdivision.
Pre-existing condition.
And I guess I never ran across that, so that was a good catch on your part. I didn't have an idea on that.
So we're just eliminating that last paragraph, we're not waiving it.
We're not waiving at this point, and then you'll work with the ZBA and this board to try to see if we can accommodate this applicant.
Squeeze that in one.
Squeeze it in, so the applicant can hopefully take advantage of the incentive for the mortgage that they're trying to close on.
So is that the last condition?
And that's, we're good? All right, do I have a second?
Member McPherson?
Aye.
Member Strack?
Aye.
Member Werzer?
Aye.
Deputy Chair Werner?
Aye. And did we,
High tech's gonna be what, September, we said?
yeah,
If they show up.
you know, I have to remember, did we table that already? Did we make a motion to
Oh,
table
we
it?
did not untable it.
You just tabled.
You
it.
never
It's already
untabled
been
it.
tabled.
You never untabled it, it's just
about it.
it's just out there.
Just talk about it.
What about Howard?
Howard's-
We just took it out.
That's right, that's right.
And don't leave that Mr. Brennan hanging. He's been on the line for.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Sorry about that. Here, we were gonna shut the lights off and go home.
No.
You would have been like, wait a minute. All right,
This will also need a part 2 and part 3.
all right, right, we have that. Right here.
Correct.
All right, so we have part 2, questions 1 through 11. Is anybody in disagreement that the answers would be no or small impact for questions 1 through 11?
I have no disagreement.
And
It should all be no.
okay. So then I'm checking the box on part 3 of determination of significance. Check this box if you would determine based on the information and analysis above and any supporting documentation that the proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member McPherson?
Aye.
Member Strack?
Aye.
Member Werzer?
Aye.
Deputy Chair Werner?
Aye. All right, so with that, we are on to subdivision resolution. Whereas the planning board of the town of Rush has examined application 2021-1P, submitted by Richland Resources, by Richland Resources. Got the original. Well, let me keep moving along here, but I'm gonna need the tax account number in that.
It's right here.
You got, all right, so this was Richland Resources, 7615 East River Road, Rush, New York, tax account number 219.01-1-1.1. And whereas the planning board has examined the application maps and other materials filed with the application, including part 1 of the short EAF, and having reviewed all current site plans, building plans, environmental plans, and reports, comments and reports from the town professional staff, the public, and other interested and involved agencies associated with the application. And whereas a public hearing on the application was held on, I believe, March 16th, 2021.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were
And
trying to.
continued, March 16th, 2021, and continued on July 20th.
All right,
2021, correct?
so-
As we closed it tonight, didn't we? Correct.
So the public hearing was initially started and held, initially started on March 16th, 2021, and was continued on July 20th, 2021, and closed. And whereas, and notice was posted as required by law. And whereas all persons at the hearing desiring to speak on the matter were heard, all correspondence on the matter was read, and all comments and statements that were received during the public hearing and or at other duly held meetings of the planning board were considered by the planning board. And now therefore be it resolved, the planning board determines that this is a unlisted action under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law and the regulations adopted pursuant thereto at 6 NYCRR Part 617 as amended. And it is further resolved that the planning board has considered the significance of the proposed subdivision by reviewing and examining the EAF, including completing the analysis for parts 2 and 3 of the EAF for the proposed subdivision, which EAF is hereby approved, adopted, and incorporated herein by reference, and is further resolved that the planning board has considered the criteria set forth in 6 NYCRR subsection 617.7C, thoroughly analyzing the identified areas of the relevant environmental concern, and hereby finds, for the reasons set forth in the completed EAF, that the proposed subdivision will result in no significant adverse environmental impacts requiring the preparation of an environmental impact statement, and thus issues a negative declaration for the proposed subdivision. It is further resolved that in accordance with the requirements of New York Town Law, Chapter 100 of the Code of the Town of Rush, Planning Board grants preliminary approval of the proposed subdivision, subject to the following conditions: the applicant obtaining the approval of the town engineer,
And you ought to state complying with. the
March
letter.
1st.
This is the same.
Approval of town engineers comments submitted to the planning board by letter of March 1st, 2021. Okay. And we want to, this isn't a condition, but we want to make sure that the variance is
Should be
in
a
this
whereas, I think.
resolution. So Shelley, we want to add a whereas in here, that whereas the zoning board of appeals of the town of Rush has examined application 2021-07Z, which is their application number submitted by Richland Resources, requesting a lot width variance at the setback line and a side setback line for lot 1. The variance was granted July 8th, 2021.
And we should say that the planning board interprets this to mean the setback line for lot 2.
Planning
And the
board,
side setback line for lot 1.
the planning board determines,
Interprets
Interprets.
the zoning board's approval for the setback line for lot 2 and the setback side setback, I'm sorry, the setback, front setback line for lot 2 and the side setback line for lot 1. That's what it should say. Front setback line for lot 2 and the side setback line for lot 1.
And do we need to add, if it's not on the map, that the remaining lands are not approved for building?
Would not be approved for building, correct? Lot 1.
Scott's gonna
Lot
pull it.
2.
Scott's gonna pull the map up.
Lot 2 is the remaining lands.
It does say not
Not
approved for
approved for
building.
building, okay, so it's on there, so that doesn't
oh,
need to
it's
be
on
added.
there? So you
Yep.
don't need that.
No, we don't need that, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so the first condition is Todd's letter,
correct?
right?
Yes,
And then we want to add attaining the approval of the town highway superintendent? No?
no, there's no,
Okay,
no further
so
cuts. or anything.
just basically,
There's the standard one that says the applicant complying with all local, state, federal laws. And Todd, on this was the drainage easements.
It was, it's in my letter.
It's in your letter, okay.
Yeah, that's there.
You know, it's a language on the road.
Oh, the resolution needs to the approval of the easements. Right, Scott, for the driveways, for the town
Yes.
attorney approval and
Yes, so there's actually two sets of easements for two different driveways.
and that's a condition, right?
yes,
Okay.
that they seek approval, because that was approval by the town attorney, I believe.
So it's
We wanted to add that in.
agreements for lot 1 north side and lot 1 south side driveways.
And they've supplied the easements. Sean just needs to,
Did they?
they did,
I saw them.
right?
What?
I don't think I've seen
There's the problem.
it. But I can look at them, that's not a problem.
So did they submit one in the
I think,
beginning?
is that,
As long as it's a condition, I can sign off on it.
that might not be in a, I mean, that's stating the,
Oh, these are the legals for the driveways. Oh, okay, yeah, the legal descriptions, as long as Todd is comfortable that they're accurate. Did you want me to also confirm that there is a documented driveway agreement that will be recorded? Because I have not seen that
yes,
form.
yes, because that was part of this whole, is that correct, Scott?
As long as it is sufficient, from my standpoint as the town attorney, as long as it's sufficient to impose the access. Whether there are private terms of that access as between Howie's and, breaking it up on the lots, I'll leave that to his discretion, but I just wanted, my only concern is it an access agreement in recordable form that will get recorded?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I don't have any more. than that.
Yep. okay, thank you. Get through that whole checklist there.
I think so. Let me see that list. Oh, never showed septic systems on the map. though. And these houses are awfully close. You'd think we'd want to see them. I'm sure they don't want to show it. Because this one house is right up against a creek. There's no septic. in this house. This is existing house, so that's not really a part of it. But I think we want to see the septic on this to make sure it's not the other property.
It's either out the back or out the front. My guess is it'll be out the back. This would be closer to the creek than this, right? Okay. So let's add that as a condition that the applicant show the existing septic systems for. How about the existing residences, the existing houses or dwellings on the property? Because there's an existing barn too.
So it's lot one, I guess. Yeah, it's lot one.
Because there's no septic system for a barn,
Okay.
right? I mean, the horses don't use them.
Right, that's really only
So
lot one,
this
because
one
that's already prior
Show
show.
it's a separate residence, yeah.
All right, so we're gonna wanna see septic for lot one.
But isn't this one?
Um,
I mean, that's,
Community pool.
no, it says septic.
Oh,
It says septic system, right?
water service.
Approximate septic system location, yeah.
Yeah, 5 barefoot septic,
It's a little bit, a couple little bit.
yeah, for
So
the one
mine's
house.
mine's
Can we see-
I'm
February
not
5th.
quite sure what
What's
this
the
is,
date on
though.
that? Was that updated? What's the date?
This is,
Scott says February 5th.
I don't know.
Phyllis,
we got it the
can
same
we just
time.
slide that over here? and
Yeah,
Scott,
no,
just bring the whole thing over. Oh, right here. Yeah, so they add those
They
details.
did add it.
They want the septic
Oh, well, that's on a different scale.
Phyllis found
So
it.
it's not on the main one.
It's underground, right?
Yeah, all right,
No, it's really just an outhouse.
all right. So we have the septic is, the
Oh,
septic
okay,
detail.
so
is
it's on here, not on here, not on the big one. All good.
Okay,
Okay,
So strike that.
strike that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member McPherson,
Aye.
member Strong,
Aye.
member Werzer.
Aye.
Deputy Chair Werner.
Aye.
That was Howard, right?
I don't know.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, that's no problem.
I don't-
It worked out
Why
good.
don't we do the formal pledge of allegiance and all of that?
I was just wondering if they would do the public.
But we don't. do it.
I always wondered that.
Zoning
Or
board
take
either.
who else does it.
I always wondered that.
I don't think we do
Thank
it
you.
zoning board.
Nice job.
Yours?
Are we closing the
Good
meeting?
job.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm gonna read through those like a banshee.
Well, it just shows up.
Yeah.
Well, couldn't they just separate?
Do you have to read all your?
Oh. hold
Table
it,
this
Scott,
one.
we need a motion. I want to make a motion to adjourn at 10:20, the planning board meeting of July 20th, 2021.
Second.
Member McPherson.
Aye.
Member Strong,
Aye.
member Werzer.
Aye.
Deputy Chair Werner.
Aye. Sorry.